I find legal documents showing that in 2003, mother signed over power of attorney to father. In 2005, she signed documents transferring her entire inheritance, nearly $500,000, into accounts she couldn't access. The signatures look shaky, uncertain, nothing like mother's usual confident script. I find a notary stamp, but when I track down the notary, she's been dead for 5 years. The documents might be forgeries, or they might have been signed under duress. Either way, they show a pattern. Father systematically stripped mother of every resource she might have used to escape him. But I need one more piece. Something visual. Something undeniable. Something that can't be explained away or dismissed as hearsay. That's when I remember the convenience store on the corner. The one that's been there since I was a child. Long Shot Liquors, run by an elderly Korean man named Mr. Park, who's survived 3 attempts by developers to buy him out. I find him behind the counter reading glasses perched on his nose as he works on a crossword puzzle. When I explain what I'm looking for, he's skeptical until I offer him $500 for an hour of his time searching his security archives. "I keep everything," he says, leading me to a back room filled with external hard drives labeled by date. "You never know when you might need proof of something." It takes 45 minutes to find the right footage. March 15, 2014, 9:47 p.m. The camera angle captures our driveway and the front of the house. Father's car is there just as I remember. The front windows glow with interior light, and even though the image is grainy, I can see shadows moving behind the curtains. Large, aggressive movements. Then the front door opens. Mother stumbles out onto the porch, clutching her right wrist against her chest. Even in the poor quality footage, I can see she's crying, can see the way she moves like someone in pain. She makes it 3 steps down the walkway before the door opens again, and father emerges. He's shouting something. The footage has no audio, but I can see his mouth moving, see the fury in his body language. He grabs her arm. She tries to pull away. They struggle for a moment on the front walk, and then father physically drags her back toward the house. Mother's legs buckle, but he doesn't stop, just hauls her up the steps and through the door. The door slams shut. The lights stay on for another hour, shadows continuing to move behind the windows before finally going dark. I watch the footage 3 times, my hands gripping the edge of Mr. Park's desk, my breath coming short and fast. This is it. This is the evidence that proves mother didn't just stand by that night, she was a victim too. Father hurt her, threatened her, forced her back inside after she tried to escape. And I left. I got in my car and I left, never knowing she was trapped in there with a monster who'd just shown exactly what he was capable of. Mr. Park clears his throat softly. "You want copy?" he asks, his voice gentle with understanding. "Yes," I managed to say. "I want everything you have from that night." I leave Mr. Park's store with a USB drive containing the footage evidence so damning it makes my hands shake as I grip the steering wheel. But even as I drive back to the house, I know there's more to find. The medical records, the security footage, the witness statements, they all paint a picture of abuse, but they don't explain the specific mechanism of my exile. They don't explain exactly how father forced mother to participate in my destruction. The disownment papers. I need to find the actual documents mother signed that night. Back in father's office, I search with renewed purpose, pulling open drawers I'd previously ignored, checking behind file folders, looking for anything from March 2014. It's not in the filing cabinets. It's not in his desk. I'm about to give up when I remember that father always kept his most important documents in the safe, hidden behind the bookshelf. I'd learned the combination years ago, watching over his shoulder when I was 16, and he was too arrogant to think I'd remember. The safe opens with a series of mechanical clicks that sound too loud in the empty house. Inside are stacks of papers, some legal documents, some financial records, and there in a manila envelope labeled Family Legal, 2014. I find them. The formal papers declaring Monica Patricia Johnson, no longer a member of the Johnson family, no longer entitled to inheritance or family support, no longer recognized as daughter or heir. My father's signature is bold and confident. My mother's signature below it is barely legible, shaky, and uneven, slanting in the wrong direction. I pull out my phone and compare it to other documents I'd found earlier. Mother's neat, right-slanted signature on Christmas cards, on old checks on my elementary school permission slips. The signature on the disownment papers is wrong. The letters lean left instead of right. The pressure is uneven. It's the signature of someone writing with their non-dominant hand because their dominant hand was broken. Mother was right-handed. The medical records prove she fractured her right wrist that night, which means she signed these papers with her left hand while in excruciating pain, while terrorized, while father stood over her and forced her to write the words that would erase her daughter from existence. I'm about to put the papers back when I notice something else in the envelope, a small digital recorder, the kind that looks like a USB drive. My hands tremble as I press play, and father's voice fills the office, preserved in digital amber speaking words that were never meant to be heard again. Sign it. His voice is cold, controlled, nothing like the shouting rage I'd heard earlier that evening. This is more terrifying somehow, the calmness of it, the certainty. Sign it now, or I'll kill both of you. She's poison to this family. She's always been poison, just like your side of the family. Weak, defiant, worthless. Richard, please. Mother's voice is barely recognizable, thick with tears and pain. Please, she's my daughter. She's our daughter. We can't just... Sign it. The sudden explosion of volume makes me jump, even though I'm listening to a recording made 10 years ago. Sign it, or I swear to God, Patricia, I will make sure neither of you leaves this house alive. Do you understand me? I will bury you both, and no one will ever know. Now pick up the pen and sign your name. There's a sound like sobbing, then silence, then the scratch of pen on paper. Mother's voice comes again, so quiet I have to turn the volume up to hear it. Forgive me, baby. Forgive me. Stop talking and sign the rest of them, father snaps. Every page. And if you ever tell anyone about this, if you ever try to contact her, if you ever breathe a word of this to anyone, I will find her and I will finish what I started tonight. Do you understand? She's only safe if she stays away. If you stay quiet. If you do exactly what I tell you. The recording ends abruptly, and I'm left sitting in father's office with tears streaming down my face, the papers scattered around me, the truth finally horribly clear. Mother didn't betray me. Mother was terrorized into betraying me. Every year of silence, every unanswered birthday, every Christmas card that never came, it wasn't because she didn't care. It was because she was trying to keep me safe from a man who'd threatened to kill us both. The lawyer who notarized these documents had to know something was wrong, had to have seen Mother's broken wrist, her tears, her obvious distress. But he notarized them anyway, probably for a fee large enough to buy his silence and his willingness to look the other way while a woman was coerced into disowning her child. I think about all the years I spent hating her. All the times I saw her face in my mind and felt nothing but anger and betrayal. All the moments I told myself I was better off without a mother who could abandon her child so easily. I'd built an entire identity around being the daughter who was thrown away, around surviving despite a mother who didn't love her enough to fight for her. But I was wrong. About everything. Mother did fight for me by staying silent, by enduring, by accepting her own imprisonment so that father wouldn't hunt me down and finish what he'd started. She sacrificed her freedom, her voice, her relationship with her daughter, all to keep me safe from a monster I'd been too naive to fully recognize. The realization breaks something inside me that's been rigid and defensive for 10 years. I slide down from father's desk chair onto the floor, my back against the wall, and I let myself cry in a way I haven't cried since the night I was thrown out. Great gulping sobs that shake my whole body, grief and rage and regret, all mixed together until I can't tell which emotion is which. I cry for Mother trapped in this house with a man who controlled and terrorized her. I cry for the girl I was who left without knowing her mother needed saving too. I cry for all the years we lost, all the conversations we never had, all the times I could have reached out but didn't, because I thought she'd chosen him over me. Mama, I whisper to the empty room, my voice breaking on the word. Mama, I'm so sorry. I should have saved you. I don't know how long I sit on the floor of Father's office, but eventually the tears stop, and I'm left with swollen eyes and a clarity that feels both painful and necessary. The house is silent around me, empty in a way that has nothing to do with the absence of people and everything to do with the absence of warmth of life, of anything resembling a home. I pick myself up and begin to walk through the rooms, really seeing them for the first time in a decade. My old bedroom is at the end of the upstairs hallway, and when I push open the door, I'm startled to find it exactly as I left it. The walls are still painted the deep purple I chose when I was 15, thinking it was sophisticated and rebellious. My old desk sits under the window, the surface still scattered with the detritus of the life I abandoned, a coffee mug with dried residue at the bottom, a stack of marketing textbooks from my senior year of college, a framed photo of Jasmine and me at the beach, both of us laughing at something I can no longer remember. The bed is made with the same floral comforter Mother bought me, now faded and dusty from years of disuse. It's like a museum exhibit of a person who stopped existing, preserved but lifeless. I move through the house like a ghost visiting her own past. The kitchen still smells faintly of the lemon cleaner Mother always used, and I can almost see her standing at the counter teaching me to make her famous pound cake, her hands guiding mine as we measured flour and sugar. "The secret is patience," she'd say. "You can't rush something that needs time to become what it's meant to be." I didn't understand then that she might have been talking about more than baking. The dining room is where Father held his tribunal, where he gathered the family to pronounce my sentence. The table is still there, dark and imposing, surrounded by chairs that suddenly seem less like furniture and more like witness stands where everyone sat in judgment. I can almost hear the echo of Father's voice, see Mother's tears, feel the weight of all those eyes watching me be erased. The room feels haunted, not by ghosts, but by the living people who allowed cruelty to happen in the name of family tradition. I find myself drawn to Mother's bedroom, a space I rarely entered even as a child. Father's presence dominates with his dark suits hanging in the closet, his cologne bottles lined up on the dresser, but there are small traces of Mother too. A romance novel on her nightstand, a framed photograph of Jasmine and me as children that she must look at when Father isn't watching a jewelry box that plays a tinny version of Clair de Lune when opened. The closet is walk-in, lined with Mother's dresses and shoes, all in muted colors that Father probably approved. I'm about to leave when I notice something odd about the floorboards near the back corner. One of them sits slightly higher than the others, and when I press on it, it shifts. I kneel down and work my fingers around the edge until it comes loose, revealing a hollow space beneath. Inside is a small wooden box, no bigger than a shoebox covered in dust. My heart pounds as I lift it out and carry it to Mother's bed. The lid is unlocked, and when I open it, I find a collection of items that tell a story of a mother who never stopped loving her daughter even when she was forced to act like she had. There are photographs of me at various ages, school pictures, candid shots from holidays, even one from my college graduation that I didn't know existed. Someone took these photos and gave them to Mother in secret, or she found them somehow and kept them hidden. My baby bracelet from the hospital, the one with my name spelled out in tiny letter beads, rests in a velvet pouch. Report cards from elementary school all the way through high school, each one carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve. Mother had saved evidence of my entire childhood, hidden it away, where Father wouldn't find it, keeping a record that I existed, that I mattered, that I was her daughter, no matter what papers she'd been forced to sign. But it's the letters that break me all over again. Dozens of them written on Mother's monogrammed stationery addressed to me, but never sent. I pick one at random, dated 3 years after my exile, and begin to read. My darling daughter, if you ever read this, please know that not a day goes by that I don't think of you. I see you in my dreams. I wonder if you're safe, if you're happy, if you've found people who love you the way you deserve to be loved. Your father monitors everything, my phone, my computer, my mail, even my conversations. I can't reach out to you. I can't let you know I still care. Because if I do, he'll hurt you. He's made that clear. The price of your safety is my silence. and it's a price I pay every single day, with a piece of my heart. I read through letter after letter, watching the progression of Mother's handwriting from neat and controlled to shakier and more desperate. She writes about wanting to leave but having nowhere to go, about hiding money when she can but never having enough. She writes about fear for both daughters' safety, about the impossible calculation of a mother trying to protect 2 children when she can barely protect herself. "If I run, he'll find us," she writes in one letter dated 5 years ago. "He's made that clear too many times. He has connections, resources, the kind of rage that doesn't let go. If I stay, maybe I can protect them from the worst of him. Maybe I can be a shield, take the blows meant for them, survive long enough to see them grow up and get away." Jasmine doesn't understand. She thinks he loves her. She doesn't see what I see. She doesn't know what he's capable of. There's a diary too, a small leather-bound book with a lock that's been broken, probably by Mother herself when she lost the key. I flip through pages of entries that document years of abusive control of a woman slowly losing herself to a man who treated her as property. The entries are heartbreaking in their matter-of-fact tone, as if Mother had resigned herself to this reality and was simply recording it for some future reckoning she never quite believed would come. At the very bottom of the box, beneath everything else, I find one more letter. This one is different from the others. Newer paper, sharper creases, dated just 1 year ago. My hands shake as I unfold it, and I recognize immediately that Mother's handwriting has deteriorated significantly, the letters uneven and difficult to read, as if her hands were trembling badly when she wrote it. "Monica." It begins, and even seeing my name in her handwriting after all these years makes tears well up again. "There's something you need to know about Jasmine. She's not who you think she is." The letter ends there mid-thought, as if Mother was interrupted or couldn't bring herself to finish whatever revelation she'd started. But those words, "she's not who you think she is," echo in my mind, combining with all the observations I'd made at the wedding, all the small differences I'd noticed, but couldn't quite explain. I sit on Mother's bed, holding that unfinished letter, and I realize that the secrets in this family go deeper than I ever imagined. Whatever Mother was trying to tell me about Jasmine, whatever truth she couldn't quite bring herself to write down, it's something big enough that she felt I needed to know it. Something important enough that even after years of forced silence, even after being terrorized into compliance, she tried to leave me this message. I need to find out what it is. I'm still sitting on Mother's bed holding her unfinished letter when my phone buzzes with an email notification. It's from the forensic lab I hired 2 weeks ago as part of building my legal case against Father. When you're preparing to expose someone's criminal activity, you need ironclad documentation of every relationship, every claim, every connection. I'd requested court-ordered DNA testing of all family members, ostensibly to verify inheritance rights and familial relationships for the lawsuit I'm preparing. What I was really doing was gathering ammunition, making sure I had every possible piece of evidence locked down before I made my move. I open the email with one hand still clutching Mother's letter in the other and begin scanning the technical language and percentage calculations. My own results come first. 99.9% probability of paternal relationship with Richard James Johnson. No surprises there, though. Seeing it in black and white somehow makes it more real, more undeniable. I am his daughter, his biological child, the one he threw away despite our shared DNA. Then I scroll to Jasmine's results and the world tilts sideways. Probability of paternal relationship with Richard James Johnson, 0.0%. Excluded as biological father. I read it 3 times, certain I'm misunderstanding something, but the science is clear and unambiguous. Jasmine Marie Johnson is not Father's biological daughter. The sister I grew up with, the golden child who was showered with love and favoritism while I was criticized and eventually discarded, shares no genetic connection with the man whose name she carries. My mind races backward through memories, re-examining them through this new lens. Mother's strange phrasing calling Jasmine her miracle baby. The way Father sometimes looked at Jasmine with something that wasn't quite love. Something harder and more calculating. The physical differences I'd noticed at the wedding, Jasmine's delicate features that matched neither parent, her petite frame, her hazel eyes that came from nowhere in our family tree. All of it suddenly makes terrible perfect sense. I pull out Mother's other letters, the ones I'd skimmed before, and read them more carefully, now looking for clues. It's in a letter dated 28 years ago, written when Jasmine would have been an infant, that I find the confession buried in careful coded language. "He knows she's not his," Mother wrote. "He's always known, or at least suspected. But his pride won't let him admit. It won't let him acknowledge that his wife strayed, that he wasn't man enough to keep her faithful. So he keeps her, keeps us both like possessions. He refuses to relinquish, even though they remind him daily of his failure. The violence has gotten worse since she was born. Some nights I think he'll kill us all. But he won't divorce me, won't let me go, because that would mean admitting the truth publicly. And Richard would rather live with a lie than face humiliation." Another letter, this one from 23 years ago, provides more context. "I never meant for it to happen. Richard was in one of his rages, had been for weeks. He'd hurt me badly enough that I couldn't hide the bruises even with makeup. Thomas saw them at the office. He was Richard's secretary, then before Richard fired him in a fit of paranoia. Thomas's wife Karen had just left him. We were both lonely, both trapped in our own ways. It lasted 3 months. Just 3 months of feeling like maybe I deserved kindness, like maybe I could be loved without fear. Then I got pregnant, and I knew. I knew she wasn't Richard's. The timing was impossible to explain away. Thomas. I search my memory and find him Thomas Wright, father's former secretary, a quiet man with kind eyes who left the company under mysterious circumstances when I was about 5 years old. I'd assumed father had fired him for incompetence, but now I understand it was something else entirely. Father had figured out the truth or gotten close enough to it that Thomas had to go. Everything about Mother's behavior suddenly makes horrible sense. The overprotection of Jasmine wasn't favoritism, it was fear. Every time Mother chose Jasmine over me, every time she seemed to give Jasmine more attention or more lenience, she was trying to protect her from Father's wrath. She was terrified that if Father ever confirmed what he suspected, if he ever had proof that Jasmine wasn't his biological child, he would destroy all of them. Keeping Jasmine close, keeping her favored, keeping up the appearance of her being the beloved daughter, was Mother's survival strategy. And I, the actual biological daughter, the one who shared Father's DNA, was expendable. I was the one Mother could afford to lose, the one whose exile might satisfy Father's rage without triggering the nuclear option of exposing Jasmine's paternity. Mother sacrificed me to save Jasmine, not because she loved me less, but because the stakes were literally life and death. The realization is both devastating and clarifying. All these years I thought Mother chose Jasmine because Jasmine was better, more lovable, more deserving. But Mother chose Jasmine because Jasmine was more vulnerable, more at risk, the child whose very existence was a daily reminder to Father of his humiliation. Mother was playing a long game of survival, making impossible calculations about which daughter she could protect and which daughter had to be thrown to the wolves. I'm still processing all of this, still trying to reconcile 10 years of understanding with this new truth when my phone rings. The caller ID shows Jasmine's name, and for a moment I consider not answering. But something in the timing feels significant, feels like the universe forcing a confrontation that's been building for a decade. I answer on the third ring. "Hello, Jasmine." Her voice is shaking, barely controlled. "We need to talk." There's no preamble, no greeting, just those 4 words delivered with the kind of urgency that suggests her world has just been rearranged as thoroughly as mine. "I just got a copy of the DNA results, too." There's a long pause on the line filled with the sound of Jasmine's unsteady breathing. "Can we meet?" She finally asks, her voice stripped of all the performance and polish I heard at the wedding. "Somewhere neutral. Somewhere we can actually talk without—" She doesn't finish the sentence, but I know what she means. Somewhere Father can't control the narrative, can't monitor the conversation, can't punish us for speaking truth. "Piedmont Park," I say. the bench by the lake. 1 hour. I arrive early, watching joggers circle the path and families spread picnic blankets on the grass. It's surreal to be here in a place that represents normalcy and peace when everything I thought I knew about my family has been systematically dismantled over the past week. When Jasmine appears at the top of the hill, I almost don't recognize her. She's wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, no armor. She looks younger than she did at the wedding, more vulnerable and utterly devastated. She sits down beside me on the bench, maintaining careful distance like she's not sure if I'll welcome her proximity or reject it. For a long moment, neither of us speaks. We just sit there, two sisters who've spent a decade as strangers trying to figure out where to even begin. "I'm not even his daughter," Jasmine finally says, and her voice breaks on the word daughter. 29 years and I don't even know who I am anymore. She's crying now, tears streaming down her face unchecked. "Do you know how many times he told me I needed to be grateful, that I needed to work harder, be better, earn my place in this family? And now I know why. Because I was never supposed to be part of it in the first place." I watch her fall apart and feel my own anger toward her anger I've carried for 10 years begin to crack. "You always felt different," I say quietly. "It's not a question." "Always?" she confirms, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. "I never understood why. You looked like them, you have Dad's nose, Mom's smile. But me, I'd look in the mirror and wonder why I didn't match. Why I felt like I was performing belonging instead of actually belonging." She laughs, but it's bitter and painful. "I thought it was just me being insecure. Turns out my instincts were right all along." "Father knew," I tell her, and I watch understanding dawn in her eyes. "Maybe not with certainty, but he suspected. That's why he treated you the way he did." Jasmine's face twists with something between rage and grief. "You know what the worst part is? You thought he loved me. Everyone thought he loved me more than you. But he didn't love me, Monica. He hated me." Her voice drops to barely above a whisper. "Every accomplishment was met with, 'Is that the best you can do?' Every mistake was proof that I was defective. When I got accepted to UGA, he said it was because of affirmative action and lowered standards, not because I'd earned it. When I made Dean's List, he accused me of sleeping with professors. Nothing I did was ever good enough because I was walking, breathing evidence of Mom's betrayal. I think about all the years I spent envious of her, believing she had the love I'd been denied. I saw the birthday parties," I say. "The new car for your 16th birthday, the trips to Europe. I thought—" "They were bribes," Jasmine interrupts. "Or traps, or both. Every gift came with strings so tight I couldn't breathe. The car meant he controlled where I went. The trips meant he could monitor who I talked to. The birthday parties were performances for his business associates, proof that he was a good father, that our family was perfect. And I had to smile through all of it, had to pretend I was grateful, because if I didn't—" She stops, her breath hitching. "God, Monica, if I didn't, he'd remind me how easily he could take it all away, how I should be thankful he kept me at all. He emotionally abused you," I say. "And it's not a question. I'm seeing it now. Seeing what I was too hurt and angry to see before." Jasmine wasn't the favored child. She was a different kind of victim, kept close so father could punish mother daily by treating her daughter with contempt disguised as generosity. "You escaped," Jasmine says, "and there's no accusation in it, just exhaustion. When you got thrown out, I was terrified, but I was also jealous. So jealous I could barely stand it. Because you got out. You were free. And I was still trapped in that house, still playing the role of the grateful daughter, still pretending not to notice the way he looked at me sometimes, like he wanted to—" She stops, shaking her head. "I've been trapped this whole time, Monica. In that house, in this family, in a life built on lies I didn't even know I was living. For the first time since I can remember, I see my sister clearly. Not as the enemy, not as the favored one, not as the sister who stood by while I was destroyed. I see her as another casualty of father's cruelty, another woman shaped by his violence, another daughter who survived the only way she knew how. I'm sorry, I say, and I mean it. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I thought you had it better. I'm sorry I left you there alone. I'm sorry I didn't defend you, Jasmine says, her voice raw. That night when he threw you out, I just stood there. I watched it happen and I said nothing because I was a coward. Because I was afraid if I spoke up, he'd throw me out too. And the worst part is I don't know if that makes me smart or just pathetic. It makes you a survivor, I tell her, and I take her hand for the first time in 10 years. Her fingers are cold, trembling, but she doesn't pull away. We both survived, just in different ways. We sit like that for a while, holding hands on a park bench, while the world continues around us, oblivious to the fact that two sisters are finally seeing each other after a decade of blindness. When Jasmine speaks again, her voice has changed. There's steel in it now, something harder and more determined than I've ever heard from her. I want to help, she says, turning to look at me directly. Whatever you're planning, whatever case you're building against him, I want to help. I want to make this right. She squeezes my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Then help me make this right. Let's bring him down together. Jasmine and I spend another hour in the park making plans, exchanging information, building the foundation of an alliance that would have seemed impossible just days ago. When we finally part ways, I feel something I haven't felt in years, the fragile, tentative beginning of hope. Not for reconciliation with father or redemption of the past, but for something better, two survivors choosing to fight together instead of against each other. I drive straight to Evelyn's house, needing to share this development with the one person who's guided me through every transformation over the past decade. She answers the door in her reading glasses, a book in hand, and her face lights up with the warmth that's become as familiar to me as breathing. Monica, sweetheart, I wasn't expecting you today. I have news, I say, following her into her study, the room where we've had so many crucial conversations. Good news, actually. Jasmine and we talked. Really talked. She wants to help bring father down. Evelyn settles into her favorite armchair, and I pull out my phone to show her photos from the wedding, wanting to give her the full context of how everything unfolded. I swipe through images I'd taken or that had been posted online, the reception hall, the guests, the moment before everything exploded. When I get to a photo someone posted of the head table, Evelyn leans forward suddenly, her entire body going rigid. Stop, she says, her voice sharp enough to make me freeze. Go back, that last photo. I swipe back to the image of Jasmine and Darius at the head table, the newlyweds toasting their guests. It's a standard wedding photo, nothing remarkable that I can see. But Evelyn has gone pale, her hand trembling as she reaches for my phone. Can you zoom in on his hand, the groom's right hand? I pinch the screen, enlarging the image until Darius's hand comes into focus. The silver ring on his right hand, the one he'd deflected questions about at the reception, is clearly visible now. Intricate carvings, old-fashioned design, unmistakably an heirloom. That's... Evelyn's voice breaks, and I watch in alarm as tears begin streaming down her face. That's my father's ring. The one I gave to my son when he was 5 years old, right before his father took him. I'd know it anywhere. I spent 15 years looking at photos of that ring, hoping I'd see it somewhere, hoping it would lead me back to him. The room seems to tilt. I sit down heavily in the chair across from her, trying to process what she's saying. Evelyn, are you telling me that Darius is... my son? She whispers, and the words seem to cost her everything. Darius is my son. The story spills out of her in fragments, painful pieces she's carried for 25 years. She'd married young to a man who seemed charming until the ring was on her finger. The marriage deteriorated quickly, became controlling, became dangerous. When she finally filed for divorce, her ex-husband retaliated by taking their 5-year-old son and disappearing. Changed the boy's name from David Carter to Darius Pierce. Moved across state lines. Blocked every attempt at contact. I searched for 15 years, Evelyn says, her voice raw with old grief. I hired every investigator I could find. I spent my fortune chasing leads that went nowhere. I called in every favor, exhausted every connection. But he'd hidden David so well, changed so much about him, that it was like my son had been erased from existence. You never stopped loving him, I say, and it's not a question. I never stopped looking until about 10 years ago, she says. The investigators told me he was either dead or so completely lost that I'd never find him. They said I was destroying myself, that I needed to accept he was gone. So I tried to build a new life. I tried to find purpose in other things. And then you walked into that diner, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I could help someone. Maybe I could keep another young woman from being destroyed by the men who should have protected her. The implications crash over me like cold water. He knows, I say. Darius knows exactly who you are, and he knows who I am. That's why he orchestrated everything, the wedding invitation, the toast, all of it. He's been manipulating this entire situation from the beginning. Evelyn nods slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes alongside the pain. He must have found my files somehow, found out about you, about how I'd mentored you, invested in you, treated you like... She stops, unable to finish. Like a daughter, I complete quietly. He thinks you replaced him. Oh God, Evelyn whispers, pressing her hands to her face. He thinks I abandoned him and then chose someone else. He doesn't know I searched. He doesn't know I never stopped loving him. He thinks... Her voice breaks completely. He thinks I gave up on him and then gave everything to you instead. I'm trying to find words of comfort when Evelyn's phone rings, the sound jarring in the heavy silence. She looks at the screen and goes even paler, if that's possible. Unknown number, she says, but something in her expression tells me she knows exactly who it is. Her hand shakes as she answers, putting it on speaker so I can hear. Hello. Her voice is barely above a whisper. Hello, Mother. Darius's voice is smooth, controlled, but there's an undercurrent of something dark and wounded beneath it. Did you miss me? Or were you too busy with your replacement daughter? The silence after Darius's words stretches for what feels like an eternity. Evelyn's face has gone ashen, her eyes locked on the phone speaker, as if she could will her son to materialize through sheer force of love. When she finally speaks, her voice is steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. David. Your name is David. You were 5 years old when your father took you, and I have spent every day since then trying to find you. My name is Darius, he says coldly. David died 25 years ago when his mother decided other things were more important than finding him. That's not true, Evelyn says, but Darius has already hung up. The dial tone echoes in the room like a death knell. Evelyn stares at the phone for a long moment before setting it down with trembling hands. He wants to meet, she says quietly. He texted the details before he called. A talk show. National television. Mother and son reunite after 25 years. He's giving me a choice: face him publicly or never see him again. Don't do it, I say immediately. Evelyn, this is a trap. He's not looking for reconciliation. He's looking for revenge. He wants to humiliate you in front of millions of people. She looks at me with an expression I've never seen on her face before, something between determination and desperation. Then let him try, because I'm not losing my son a second time without fighting for him. If he wants a public reckoning, I'll give him one, but I'll do it with the truth. 3 days later, I'm sitting in the studio audience of one of the country's most watched daytime talk shows, watching Evelyn walk onto the stage. She's dressed simply in a gray suit, her silver hair pulled back, no armor except her dignity and the thick folder of documents she carries. The host, a woman known for emotionally manipulative reunions, introduces the segment with breathless drama about a mother and son separated for 25 years, finally coming together to heal old wounds. The audience applauds, expecting tears and hugs and a heartwarming resolution. They have no idea what they're about to witness. Darius walks out from the opposite side of the stage, and the contrast is deliberate. Where Evelyn looks vulnerable and exposed, Darius looks polished and controlled in an expensive suit, his expression carefully neutral. They don't embrace. They don't even move toward each other. They take seats on opposite ends of the couch as far apart as the furniture allows, and the audience's applause falters into confused silence. "Evelyn," the host begins, her voice dripping with false intimacy. "You've been searching for your son for 25 years. How does it feel to finally be in the same room with him?" "Like my heart is breaking all over again," Evelyn says quietly, and the raw honesty of it silences even the host. "Because I can see in his eyes that he doesn't believe I love him, that he thinks I abandoned him. And nothing I've lived through in the past 25 years hurts more than knowing my son believes I didn't want him." Darius's jaw tightens, but he says nothing. The host turns to him, sensing the tension. "Darius, what would you like to say to your mother?" "I'd like to know why she gave up," he says, his voice cold and measured. "I'd like to know why, after all these years of allegedly searching, she decided to invest all her time and money and love into someone else's daughter instead of continuing to look for her own son." The camera cuts to Evelyn, and I watch her absorb the blow with visible pain. But when she speaks, her voice is clear. "I never gave up, David. I searched for you for 15 years. I hired investigators in 12 different states. I spent every dollar I had following leads that went nowhere. Your father changed your name, changed your appearance, moved you constantly. He made sure I could never find you." She opens the folder and begins pulling out documents. These are the investigative reports. Hundreds of pages covering 15 years of searching. Every birthday, I wrote you a letter, even though I had nowhere to send it. Every Christmas, I lit a candle for you. Every single day, I wondered if you were safe, if you were happy, if you knew how much I loved you. She stands and walks toward Darius, holding out a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon. "These are 25 years of letters to you, one for every birthday. Read them and then tell me I didn't love you. Tell me I gave up." Darius doesn't take the letters. Instead, he stands towering over his mother, and the rage that's been simmering beneath his controlled exterior finally erupts. "You gave up," he shouts, and the audience gasps. "Maybe not at first, but eventually you did. And then what did you do?" "You found her." He points at me in the audience, and suddenly cameras are swiveling in my direction. "Monica Johnson, your protege, your mentee, the woman you've spent the last 10 years treating like the daughter you lost. You gave her everything, your time, your wisdom, your resources, your love, everything that should have been mine." Evelyn is crying openly now, but she doesn't back down. "I helped her because helping her was the only way I could survive losing you. Because if I couldn't save my own son, maybe I could save someone else's daughter. Because living with purpose was the only alternative to dying from grief." "That's not good enough," Darius says, and his voice breaks on the last word despite his anger. "That's not you replaced me. You found someone more convenient, someone who didn't come with complicated history and trauma, someone easier to love." "No one could ever replace you," Evelyn says, reaching for him. "David, please." "My name is Darius." He jerks away from her touch, and the movement is violent enough that security takes a step forward. "You don't get to call me David. You don't get to pretend you know me. You gave up your right to be my mother when you stopped looking, when you found someone else to pour all that love into while I was out here wondering why I wasn't worth finding." The host is trying to intervene to redirect this towards something more palatable for television, but it's too late. This isn't a reunion, it's an execution, and both Evelyn and Darius know it. He turns to walk off stage, but not before delivering one final blow. "You haven't seen the last of me," he says, looking directly at me instead of his mother. "None of you have. Because if I can't have the mother I deserved, I'll make damn sure the daughter she chose instead pays for stealing what was mine." He storms off stage, leaving Evelyn standing there with her letters still clutched in her hands, tears streaming down her face, broken in front of millions of viewers. The host is saying something about taking a commercial break, about how they'll continue this conversation, but everyone knows there's nothing left to say. The damage is done. The wound is open, and Darius's parting words hang in the air like a threat that's only just beginning. The aftermath of the television disaster is immediate and brutal. Within hours, the segment has been clipped and shared across every social media platform, dissected and analyzed by millions of strangers who think they understand the complexity of what they witnessed. Evelyn's publicist calls it a PR nightmare. I call it a warning shot. Darius has declared war not just on his mother, but on me, and I know him well enough by now to understand that his threats aren't empty posturing. I drive Evelyn home from the studio, and she's silent the entire way, staring out the window with the unseeing eyes of someone whose world has just collapsed. I want to comfort her, but I don't know how. What do you say to a woman who just found her long-lost son only to discover he hates her? What comfort exists for that particular brand of devastation? I'm still wrestling with these questions 2 days later when Jasmine calls. It's late, nearly midnight, and the panic in her voice is immediate and unmistakable. Monica, I need you to come to the house, right now. Don't tell anyone. Just come. What's wrong? Is it Father? Just come, she interrupts, and then the line goes dead. I consider calling the police, consider bringing backup, consider doing any number of sensible things. Instead, I grab my keys and drive to my childhood home for what feels like the 100th time in the past 2 weeks. Jasmine is waiting by the back door, her face pale in the porch light, her hands shaking so badly she can barely unlock the door to let me in. He's still at the hospital, she says before I can ask. Mother's staying with him overnight. The house is empty. I've been going through his office looking for financial records like you asked, but Monica... Her voice breaks. I found something else. Something so much worse. She leads me to Father's office, and the room is in disarray. File cabinets, open papers spread across the desk, books pulled from shelves. It looks like the aftermath of a desperate search, which I suppose it is. Jasmine picks up a leather-bound volume from the desk, one of those expensive journals that executives buy to look important but rarely use. I found this inside a hollowed-out law book, she says, handing it to me. He hid it. Really hid it. Which means he knew how bad this was. I open the journal and immediately recognize Father's handwriting, that aggressive, angular script that always looked like it was attacking the page. The entries are dated starting from 2 weeks ago, right after the wedding. My eyes scan the words, and ice floods my veins. Monica's return changes everything. She knows too much has too much power. The business, the family, everything I built, she'll destroy it all out of spite. She's always been vindictive, always been determined to tear down what she couldn't have. I won't let that happen. I won't let her win. I flip forward a few pages. Contacted Martinez today. He's expensive but reliable. Knows how to make things look natural. Heart attack, car accident, random mugging, whatever works. $50,000 upfront, $50,000 when it's done. Worth every penny to eliminate this problem permanently. Another entry, dated 5 days ago. Martinez wants the go-ahead. I told him to wait until after the trial. Let her think she's won. Let her feel safe. Then strike when her guard is down. Make it look like stress from the litigation. No one will question it. My hands are shaking so badly I almost dropped the journal. Father didn't just want to fight me in court or discredit me publicly. He wanted me dead. Actually, literally dead. And he'd been planning it methodically, like it was just another business transaction that required strategic timing and proper execution. There's more, Jasmine says, and her voice is hollow. She hands me a folder containing printed emails. The email address is obviously fake throwaway accounts used by people who don't want to be traced, but the content is crystal clear. Detailed exchanges between Father and someone called J. Martinez, negotiating terms, discussing methods, coordinating timing. In one email, Father writes, "Make it look like an accident. I can't have this traced back to me. My daughter has made many enemies in business. It should be easy to create alternative suspects." And this, Jasmine says, pulling out a handwritten ledger, In father's writing, $50,000 paid to J. Martinez via cryptocurrency, untraceable. First installment for contract work, second payment upon completion of assignment. I'm still processing, still trying to comprehend that my father, the man whose DNA I share, who held me as a baby, who taught me to ride a bike, actually hired someone to murder me when Jasmine crosses to father's desk and kneels down. The worst part is this, she says, reaching under the drawer. She peels away something taped there and holds up a micro SD card so small it's barely visible in her palm. I almost didn't find it, but I remembered how he used to hide things when we were kids, tape them under drawers where no one would think to look. She slides the card into her laptop, and after a moment, audio begins to play. Father's voice recorded on what sounds like a phone call is unmistakable. "I want her dead," he says, and the casual tone makes it somehow more horrifying than if he'd been shouting. "I don't care how you do it. Car accident, mugging, whatever. Just make it clean. No traces back to me. Can you do that?" A male voice responds, accent suggesting someone who grew up in Central or South America. "I can do that. But I need details. Where does she live? What's her routine? Does she have security?" "I'll send you everything." Father says, "Photos, addresses, schedule. She thinks she's so smart, but she's predictable, vulnerable. That bitch has taken everything from me, my company, my reputation, my dignity. She's going to pay with her life." "And the timeline?" the voice asks. "After the trial," Father says. "Let her think she's won. Let her celebrate. Then strike when she's not expecting it. When her guard is down. Make it look like stress got to her. Heart attack, stroke, whatever. Just make sure she's dead." The recording ends and Jasmine stops the playback. We sit in silence for a moment, the weight of what we've just heard settling over us like a shroud. My father, the man who gave me life, has hired someone to take it away. The threats, the hatred, the decades of control and abuse. It's all been building to this. He'd rather see me dead than see me successful. He'd rather commit murder than admit he was wrong about me. Jasmine's phone is in her hand, her fingers hovering over the screen. "We need to call the police. Right now. This is evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. This is Monica, this is a credible threat on your life." She's right, and I know it. But my mind is also racing through the implications. If we call the police now, Father gets arrested but might make bail. Martinez, whoever he is still out there, still hired, still planning. The threat doesn't end just because Father's in custody. If anything, it might accelerate things. My phone rings, making us both jump. It's Jasmine calling, except Jasmine is right here in front of me. I look at my screen confused and realize it's her phone that's ringing, not mine. She answers, her voice shaky. "Hello?" "Jasmine." It's Darius, and even through the speaker I can hear the strange quality in his voice. "Is Monica with you?" Jasmine looks at me uncertain. "Yes, why?" "Good," he says. "Keep her there. Lock the doors. I just intercepted a communication I think you both need to know about. Your father's hired killer. He moved up the timeline. Monica's not safe. None of you are." Jasmine's face goes white. "What are you talking about?" But even as she asks, I hear the sound of a car door closing outside. Footsteps on gravel. And Jasmine's eyes meet mine with pure terror as she whispers into the phone, "You need to see this. Now. He's planning to kill you, Monica. We have to stop him before the trial." The footsteps outside turn out to be a late-night jogger, but the false alarm is enough to galvanize us into action. We call the police, and within an hour, Father's office is swarming with detectives photographing evidence, bagging the journal, and the SD card taking our statements. A detective named Sarah Williams, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listens to the recordings with an expression that grows progressively darker. "This is conspiracy to commit murder," she says. "We'll pick up your father at the hospital tonight. As for this Martinez, we're already running the name through our databases. But arrests and investigations take time, and time is something we don't have. which is why after the police leave, Jasmine and I stay up through the night working. We spread everything across the dining room table like we're preparing for war, because that's exactly what we're doing. Medical records showing Mother's injuries, audio recordings of Father forcing her to sign documents, security footage of him dragging her back into the house, DNA results proving Jasmine isn't his biological daughter, financial records documenting decades of fraud and embezzlement, and now the murder-for-hire evidence that transforms this from a civil case about family trauma into a criminal case about attempted murder. Jasmine works with an intensity I've never seen from her before, cross-referencing documents, creating timelines, building a narrative so airtight that no lawyer could dismantle it. She's taken off her wedding ring, I notice, set it aside on the table like she's shedding an identity that no longer fits. "He'll never forgive me for this," she says quietly, around 3 a.m, not looking up from the laptop where she's organizing files. "When he finds out I'm the one who found the evidence, who went to the police, who's helping you build this case, he'll disown me just like he disowned you." "Are you afraid of that?" I ask, though I already know the answer. She looks up, and her eyes are red-rimmed from exhaustion, but clear with purpose. "I'm terrified. But I'm more afraid of what happens if we don't stop him. More afraid of living the rest of my life knowing I had a chance to do the right thing and chose comfort instead." She gestures at the evidence spread before us. "For the first time in my life, I'm choosing truth over safety. It's the most frightening thing I've ever done. But it's also the first time I've felt free. By dawn, we have everything organized, categorized, and ready to present. But I'm too wired with adrenaline and coffee to sleep, so I drive to Evelyn's house to update her on the developments. I find her in the kitchen making tea with hands that shake slightly, and the moment I see her face, I know something's wrong. She looks older than she did just days ago, as if the confrontation with Darius aged her a decade overnight. "I'm fine," she says before I can ask, but the lie is transparent. "Just tired. It's been a difficult week." We're reviewing the evidence together, planning our next moves, when Evelyn suddenly goes pale and grabs the edge of the kitchen counter. "Evelyn?" I reach for her, but she's already collapsing, her teacup shattering on the tile floor. I catch her before she hits the ground, lowering her gently while fumbling for my phone to call 911. The paramedics arrive within minutes, and I ride with her to the hospital, holding her hand while they check her vitals and ask questions I can barely answer through my panic. At the emergency room, a cardiologist named Dr. Patel examines her and delivers news that makes my stomach drop. Her heart is significantly weakened. The stress test results are concerning. She needs complete rest, reduced stress, and careful monitoring. Any additional emotional trauma could be dangerous. When I'm finally allowed to see her, Evelyn is propped up in a hospital bed, looking small and fragile in a way that terrifies me. "Don't," she says when she sees my expression. "Don't you dare suggest I sit this out. I've missed too much already. I let my son grow up thinking I abandoned him. I won't miss seeing justice done for you and your mother. Evelyn, your heart will keep beating long enough to see this through." She interrupts with a flash of her old steel. "I need to be there, Monica, for all of us, for your mother who suffered in silence, for you who survived when they tried to break you. For my son who needs to see that fighting for what's right sometimes means fighting people you love. I won't miss this trial. I won't miss seeing that man face consequences for what he's done." The doctors reluctantly agree to release her with strict instructions and a prescription for medications I make her promise to take. But I know her well enough to see the toll this has taken. The woman who pulled me from rock bottom, who taught me everything I know about strength and resilience, is running on fumes and stubborn determination. The murder plot changes everything about our security situation. I hire a private security firm that specializes in protecting people under credible threat. Within 24 hours, I have 2 bodyguards who follow me everywhere, security systems installed in Evelyn's house and my hotel, and a detailed protection plan that covers every movement. Jasmine moves into my hotel suite, unable to return to the house she shared with Darius. Unable to face a husband who might be working with Father for all we know. We live like fugitives in our own city, looking over our shoulders, jumping at unexpected sounds, checking under cars for explosives like we're characters in a thriller, instead of real people trying to survive a father's hatred. But we also work. Every day we refine the case coordinate with Detective Williams, prepare for the trial that's now just 48 hours away. The night before we're scheduled to appear in court, I stand on the steps of the Fulton County Courthouse, looking up at the imposing columns and the words, "Equal justice under law," carved into the stone. Jasmine stands beside me, and Evelyn, despite her doctor's orders, has insisted on being here too. The wind whips my hair around my face, and I feel the weight of everything that's brought us to this moment. 10 years of exile, decades of abuse, a lifetime of lies finally being dragged into the light. "Are you ready?" Jasmine asks quietly. I think about Mother trapped in that house for so many years. I think about the girl I was thrown away like garbage. I think about Evelyn who lost her son and found purpose in saving someone else's daughter. I think about all the women who suffer in silence because men like Father have convinced the world that their version of events is the only truth that matters. Tomorrow, I whisper more to myself than to them, we end this. Tomorrow arrives with the kind of crystalline clarity that feels almost cruel. The sky is a perfect blue, the temperature comfortable, the kind of day that should be spent celebrating rather than dragging family trauma through the court system. But here we are, walking through metal detectors and past television cameras, entering a courtroom that's packed to capacity with reporters, curious onlookers, and family members who've chosen sides in this very public battle. Father sits at the defendant's table, flanked by 2 expensive lawyers in matching navy suits. He's thinner than I remember the hospital stay having taken a visible toll, but his eyes when they meet mine are as hard and unforgiving as ever. Mother sits in the front row behind him, her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully blank. She hasn't looked at me once since I entered the courtroom, and I wonder if that's shame or fear, or simply the habit of decades spent avoiding confrontation. Jasmine sits on my side of the courtroom in the row directly behind me, and I can feel her presence like an anchor keeping me steady. Evelyn is beside her despite her doctor's protests, looking fragile but determined. My legal team, 3 brilliant lawyers led by a woman named Patricia Chen, who specializes in family law and domestic violence cases, sits at our table reviewing last-minute notes. Judge Sandra Martinez, a woman in her early 60s with steel-gray hair and a reputation for no-nonsense jurisprudence, calls the court to order. The sound of the gavel echoes through the room, and suddenly, this is real. No more preparation, no more rehearsal. This is the moment where truth either prevails or gets buried under legal maneuvering and family loyalty. My lawyer stands her voice clear and confident as she delivers the opening statement. Your Honor, this case is about systematic abuse, coercion, and the weaponization of family bonds to control and ultimately destroy a daughter who dared to have a will of her own. We will prove that Patricia Johnson was forced under threat of death to sign documents disowning her daughter Monica. We will prove that Richard Johnson physically assaulted his wife, breaking her wrist in the process. We will prove that he has spent decades controlling, isolating, and terrorizing his family. And we will prove that when his daughter survived his attempt to erase her when she built success, despite his conviction that she would fail, he couldn't tolerate the challenge to his authority and sought to have her killed. Father's lawyer, a silver-haired man named Harrison Wells, who probably costs more per hour than most people make in a week, objects immediately. Your Honor, counsel is conflating multiple unrelated issues and making inflammatory accusations without foundation. This is a civil case about an alleged wrongful disownment, not a criminal proceeding about abuse or murder for hire. The foundation will become clear as we present evidence, Your Honor. Patricia responds smoothly. Everything is connected. The pattern of abuse, the coerced signature, the ongoing threats, they all support our claim that my client was wrongfully and illegally disowned under duress. Judge Martinez nods. I'll allow it. But counsel, make sure your evidence supports these claims. This court has no patience for theatrics. The first piece of evidence Patricia presents is the disownment document itself, projected on a screen for the entire courtroom to see. She walks the court through it, methodically pointing out Mother's signature and comparing it to examples of her normal handwriting. "Notice the leftward slant," Patricia says using a laser pointer. "Notice the uneven pressure, the shakiness of the letters. This is not Patricia Johnson's natural signature. This is the signature of someone writing with their non-dominant hand." She presents the medical records next. The emergency room intake form, the x-rays showing the fractured wrist, the doctor's note about injury patterns inconsistent with falling. Patricia Johnson arrived at the hospital at 11:47 p.m. on March 15, 2014, Patricia explains. Less than 3 hours after signing these documents, she claimed she fell downstairs. The attending physician noted that the injury pattern suggested a defensive wound, the kind someone sustains when raising their arm to protect themselves from a blow. The courtroom is silent, except for the rustling of papers and the occasional gasp from spectators as the implications sink in. Father's lawyer objects repeatedly. "Speculation, Your Honor. The doctor's note is opinion, not fact. There's no proof of who caused the injury." But each objection only seems to highlight how desperate he is to keep this evidence from being fully examined. Then comes the audio recording. Patricia warns the court that the content is disturbing, and when Father's voice fills the courtroom, cold, threatening, explicitly demanding that Mother sign the papers or face death, I watch the jury's expressions shift from curious to horrified. "Sign it now, or I'll kill both of you," Father's voice says, and the words hang in the air like an indictment that no lawyer's objection can dismiss. Mother is crying silently in the front row, now tears streaming down her face, but she makes no sound. Some of the jurors are looking at her with open sympathy. Others are looking at Father with barely concealed disgust. The security footage from Mr. Park's convenience store is perhaps the most damning piece of evidence. The courtroom watches on the large screen as Mother stumbles out of the house, watches as Father follows and physically drags her back inside. Someone in the gallery audibly gasps. A juror in the front row covers her mouth. And Father, for the first time since the trial began, shows a crack in his composure. His jaw tightens. His hands clench on the table. He knows how this looks. He knows there's no explaining it away. When it's time for testimony, I take the stand. Father's lawyer Wells approaches with the kind of predatory confidence that comes from years of destroying witnesses on cross-examination. His strategy is immediately clear. Paint me as vindictive as someone using the courts to exact revenge for perceived slights, as a bitter daughter who can't accept that her family set reasonable boundaries. "Ms. Johnson," he begins, his tone dripping with false concern. "You're a successful woman now. You run a multi-billion-dollar company. You're wealthy, powerful, respected in your industry. Why, after 10 years, do you feel the need to dredge up these painful family matters? Why not simply move forward with your life?" I meet his eyes without flinching. Because my mother deserved better than to spend decades being terrorized by a man who broke her bones and threatened her life. Because truth matters more than comfort. Because silence protects abusers and condemns victims to continued suffering. I'm here because someone needs to say out loud what my family has pretended didn't happen for far too long. Wells tries another angle. "Isn't it true that you were disowned because you refused to make a reasonable choice that would have benefited your family, that you were asked to enter into a mutually beneficial marriage arrangement, and you refused? I was told to marry a man I didn't know, didn't love, and didn't trust in order to save my father's failing business," I correct him. "I was 28 years old with my own dreams and ambitions. Refusing to be sold like property to fix someone else's financial mistakes isn't unreasonable. It's basic human dignity." He tries to rattle me with questions about my business success, implying that I'm only here because I want to punish Father for doubting me, that this is about ego rather than justice. But I've spent 10 years in boardrooms with men like him, men who think volume and aggression can substitute for actual arguments. I answer every question calmly, factually, letting the evidence speak for itself, rather than getting drawn into emotional sparring. After 2 hours of testimony and cross-examination, Judge Martinez looks ready to call a recess. She's reaching for her gavel when the courtroom doors open and District Attorney James Morrison walks in with 2 assistants carrying file boxes. The energy in the room shifts immediately, confusion rippling through the gallery. "Your Honor." Morrison says, his voice cutting through the murmurs, "I apologize for the interruption, but the state has additional criminal charges to file against the defendant that directly pertain to these proceedings. Given the serious nature of these charges and their relevance to the case currently before you, I request permission to address the court." Judge Martinez's eyebrows rise. She looks at Father, then at his lawyers, then back at the DA. "Approach the bench," she says, and both legal teams huddle with her for a hushed conference. I can't hear what's being said, but I watch Father's face drain of color as his lawyer reads whatever document Morrison has handed to the judge. When they return to their positions, Judge Martinez looks grimmer than she did before. "Mr. Morrison, you may proceed, but make it quick. This is highly irregular." Morrison faces the courtroom, his expression serious. "Your Honor, members of the court, 3 days ago, Jasmine Pierce came forward with evidence that Richard Johnson conspired to commit murder. Specifically, he hired a contract killer to murder his daughter, Monica Johnson. We have recordings of him explicitly ordering her death, financial records showing payment to the hired killer, and testimony from Ms. Pierce about discovering this plot. The state is filing charges of conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder, and attempted murder." The courtroom erupts, gasps, shouts, reporters frantically typing. Judge Martinez slams her gavel, repeatedly calling for order. Father's lawyers are on their feet, objecting, demanding continuances, but their voices are drowned out by the chaos. And through it all, Father sits perfectly still, his face a mask that can't quite hide the fear in his eyes, as he realizes that this time he can't charm or threaten or buy his way out of what's coming. Judge Martinez finally restores order after nearly 5 minutes of chaos, her gavel slamming so hard I'm surprised it doesn't crack. "This court will come to order immediately, or I will clear the gallery," she announces, her voice cutting through the din like a blade. The room settles into a tense, breathless quiet, everyone leaning forward in their seats, sensing that we've crossed some threshold into territory that courtroom dramas are made of. District Attorney Morrison stands at the prosecutor's table, and his next words land like grenades. "Your Honor, the state is prepared to present evidence of these charges immediately. We have documentation recordings, financial records, and most importantly, we have a witness who is prepared to testify in exchange for consideration on his own charges. The witness is currently in custody and available to testify today." Father's lead attorney Wells is on his feet so fast his chair tips backward. "Your Honor, this is absurd. The defense has had no time to prepare, no opportunity to review this alleged evidence, no chance to mount an adequate response. This is a clear violation of my client's rights. I demand an immediate continuance and a separate proceeding for these charges." But Judge Martinez is looking at the documents Morrison handed her, her expression growing darker with each page she turns. "Mr. Wells, given the serious nature of these charges and their direct relevance to the case, already before this court, specifically the pattern of threats and violence that led to Ms. Johnson's disownment, I'm going to allow the testimony. You'll have full opportunity for cross-examination. But this witness is testifying today." She nods to the bailiff, and I watch as the side door of the courtroom opens. 2 sheriff's deputies enter, flanking a man in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. He's in his early 40s, lean and weathered, with the kind of face that's seen too much and says too little. His dark hair is cropped short, and his eyes scan the courtroom with a detachment that suggests this isn't his first time testifying in a court of law. "State your name for the record," Morrison says once the man is seated in the witness box. "Jorge Martinez." The man says, his voice carrying a slight accent, calm and methodical, like he's reading a grocery list rather than testifying about murder for hire. "Mr. Martinez, you've been arrested on charges related to conspiracy to commit murder. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you've agreed to testify here today in exchange for consideration from the prosecution?" "Yes. Full immunity for my testimony and cooperation in this case. Morrison pulls out a photograph and shows it to Martinez, then to the jury, then projects it on the courtroom screen. It's father a professional headshot from his company website. Do you recognize this man? Martinez doesn't hesitate. Yes, that's Richard Johnson. He hired me to kill his daughter. The courtroom erupts again, but this time Judge Martinez's glare is enough to silence it quickly. Morrison continues his voice steady and professional, walking Martinez through the timeline. When was he first contacted? How was payment arranged? What were the specific instructions? Martinez answers every question with an unsettling calmness, pulling out details like he's describing a business transaction rather than a murder plot. He contacted me through an encrypted messaging app in late September, said he had a problem that needed to be permanently solved. We negotiated terms. $50,000 upfront transferred via cryptocurrency to ensure it couldn't be traced. Another $50,000 after the job was completed. Morrison presents bank records showing father's cryptocurrency transactions, dates, and amounts, matching Martinez's testimony exactly. And what were your instructions regarding the target? Monica Johnson. He sent me photos, her address, her routine. He wanted it to look like an accident or natural causes. Said she was under a lot of stress, had made enemies in business, so a heart attack or car accident wouldn't raise suspicion. He specifically told me to wait until after some trial was over. Said that's when her guard would be down, when she'd think she was safe. I feel Jasmine's hand find mine from the row behind me, squeezing tight. We both know how close I came to this becoming reality. How father's plan might have worked if Jasmine hadn't found that evidence, if we hadn't moved fast enough. Did he give you a reason for wanting his daughter killed? Morrison asks. Martinez shrugs slightly. He said she'd destroyed him, taken his company, ruined his reputation, poisoned his family against him. Said she was... He pauses, consulting notes. His words were, "That bitch has taken everything and she'll pay with her life." Morrison plays the audio recording, then the one Jasmine found on the micro SD card. Father's voice fills the courtroom again, but this time it's not threatening Mother, it's ordering his daughter's death. "I want her dead. I don't care how. Just make it clean. No traces back to me." I watch the jury as they listen. Several are openly shocked, mouths agape. One woman in the back row has tears streaming down her face. Even the most stoic among them look disturbed by the casual cruelty in Father's voice, the way he discusses murder like it's a minor inconvenience to be handled. When Morrison finishes his questioning, Wells stands for cross-examination, but there's defeat in his posture. He knows there's no explaining this away, no character assassination that will make a murder-for-hire plot seem reasonable. He tries anyway, suggesting that Martinez is lying for immunity, that the evidence could be fabricated, that there's no way to verify these claims. But Martinez has receipts literally. Text messages, email exchanges, payment confirmations, even a recording of a phone call where Father explicitly discusses timeline and methods. After less than an hour of testimony that feels like a lifetime, Morrison addresses Judge Martinez. Your Honor, based on this testimony and the supporting evidence, the state requests that Richard Johnson be taken into custody immediately on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder, and attempted murder. Father, who has been sitting rigid and silent throughout Martinez's testimony, suddenly explodes. He's on his feet, his face purple with rage, pointing at me with a shaking hand. "She deserves it," he screams, his voice cracking with fury. "She destroyed me. She took everything I built, everything I worked for. That ungrateful bitch ruined my life." Bailiffs are moving toward him, but Father isn't finished. He lunges across the courtroom barrier, trying to reach me, his hands outstretched like he wants to strangle me right here in front of everyone. "You were always worthless. Always. I should have finished you years ago. I should have..." Two bailiffs tackle him before he gets within 10 feet of me. He's on the ground now, still screaming, still spewing hatred, even as they pull his arms behind his back to handcuff him. "You'll never win. You hear me? Never. You're nothing. Nothing." Judge Martinez is standing now, her face shocked despite years of seeing courtroom outbursts. "Remove the defendant immediately. Bailiffs, get him out of my courtroom." They drag father toward the door, but he's still screaming, still fighting against the hands holding him. "I should have killed you when you were born. Should have saved myself the trouble. You were a mistake, my biggest mistake." His voice echoes through the courthouse hallway, even after the doors close behind him, the sound of his rage fading but never quite disappearing. The courtroom sits in stunned silence. Even the reporters seem too shocked to type. Mother has her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. The jury looks traumatized. And I sit at my table watching the doors where they took him, feeling nothing but a strange, hollow relief that it's finally over. Judge Martinez recesses court for the day, citing the need to process what just transpired. As people file out, still murmuring in shock, Jasmine helps me stand on legs that suddenly feel unsteady. Patricia squeezes my shoulder. "That was his confession," she says quietly. "Everything he just said was recorded. He just handed us the case on a silver platter." Outside the courthouse, camera flashes blind me as reporters shout questions I don't answer. My security team creates a path through the crowd, and I see Evelyn's car parked at the curb, engine running. She's in the back seat, and even from here I can see how drawn she looks, how the strain of the day has taken its toll. But she's holding something, a cream-colored envelope that looks old, worn at the edges. I climb into the car beside her, and Jasmine slides in after me. Evelyn looks at us both, her eyes sad and tired, and holds out the envelope with trembling hands. "There's one more thing you need to know," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. The envelope feels heavy in my hands, weighted with more than just paper. Evelyn's expression tells me that whatever's inside represents something significant, something she's been holding on to for the right moment. I open it carefully, sliding out official-looking documents with a logo I recognize: Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. "Your mother came to see me about 11 years ago," Evelyn says, her voice soft with memory. "A month before you were disowned, though. I didn't know that's what was coming. She asked me to help her set something up, something your father could never know about. She'd been selling her jewelry piece by piece, items her own mother had left her, things that were legally hers alone. She had $23,000, and she wanted to do something with it that would protect you." I scan the documents, my vision blurring as the details come into focus. Policyholder Patricia Marie Johnson. Beneficiary Monica Patricia Johnson. Coverage amount $2 million. Policy effective date February 14, 2014. 1 month before I was thrown out. 1 month before my life imploded. "She bought life insurance?" Jasmine asks beside me, reading over my shoulder. "But how did she keep paying the premiums if father controlled all the money?" "She took night shift cleaning jobs at office buildings," Evelyn says. 3 nights a week, midnight to 6 in the morning. Told your father she had insomnia and liked to walk. She'd clean offices, make just enough to cover the premium payments, and hide every penny of it from him. For 11 years, Monica. Your mother worked nights in secret for 11 years to keep this policy active, to make sure you'd be taken care of if something happened to her." My hands are shaking so badly I almost drop the papers. There's a letter paper-clipped to the policy, and I recognize Mother's handwriting immediately, that careful, elegant script I remember from birthday cards and grocery lists. The paper is worn soft at the creases, like it's been folded and unfolded many times, like Mother took it out and read it herself whenever she needed to remember why she was doing this. "My darling Monica," it begins, and I have to stop reading because tears are blurring the words. Jasmine puts her arm around me, and Evelyn quietly hands me a tissue, and I take a shaky breath before continuing. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't be stronger while I lived. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you the way a mother should. I'm sorry I couldn't stand up to him, couldn't leave, couldn't do any of the brave things you probably needed me to do. But I could do this. I could work nights while he slept. I could hide money where he'd never think to look. I could make sure that even if I failed you in every other way, you'd be okay when I was gone. You were never my failure, Monica. You were always my greatest pride, my brightest light, the best thing I ever did in a life full of mistakes. Build something beautiful with this. Help other daughters who need the mother I couldn't be. Love, Mama." I'm crying now, really crying, the kind of crying that comes from a place so deep I didn't know it existed. Jasmine is crying too, and when I look at Evelyn, I see tears streaming down her weathered face. We sit in the back of that car outside the courthouse where my father was just arrested, and we grieve for the woman who loved us the only way she knew how, in secret, in silence, in the small acts of rebellion she could manage without getting us all killed. "She never stopped fighting for you," Evelyn says. "She just had to fight in ways no one could see." The foundation is Jasmine's idea. "We use the money to help other women like Mom," she says that evening, as we sit in my hotel room, the insurance documents spread across the coffee table. "Women who are trapped, who think they have no options, who need someone to believe in them the way Mom believed in you, even when she couldn't say it out loud. We call it the Resilient Phoenix Foundation, and it becomes our mission, our purpose, our way of turning Mother's suffering into something that saves lives instead of just ending hers. We hire lawyers who specialize in domestic violence cases, provide emergency housing for women fleeing abuse, offer job training and therapy and childcare. We create the support system. Mother never had the escape route that might have saved her if she'd had access to it 30 years ago. The grand opening is 6 months after the trial. Father is in prison awaiting sentencing on multiple charges. Mother passed away 3 months ago, her heart finally giving out after decades of stress and fear. But we've created something in her name, something that would make her proud if she could see it. The community center we've renovated is beautiful, bright and open and safe, with security systems and counselors and resources for women who need help. Jasmine stands beside me at the ribbon-cutting ceremony holding her 3-month-old daughter. She's named her Patricia after our mother, and the baby girl has Mother's dark eyes and gentle spirit. Evelyn sits in the front row despite her failing health, wearing her best dress, smiling through her fatigue, because she refuses to miss this. On the wall behind us hangs a large portrait of Mother painted from a photograph taken before Father broke her spirit, when she still smiled with her whole face, and her eyes still held light. Beneath it, a plaque reads, "In memory of Patricia Johnson, who taught us that love sometimes means sacrifice, and strength sometimes means surviving." I step up to the microphone, looking out at the crowd of survivors who've come to see this place that will help them rebuild their lives. Some of them have children clinging to their legs. Some of them have fresh bruises they've tried to cover with makeup. All of them have stories like ours, variations on a theme of men who thought love meant ownership and family meant control. "They tried to break us," I begin, and my voice is steady, strong. "Everything. I wasn't 10 years ago when I was sleeping in my car and wondering if I'd survive. My father tried to break my mother. He tried to break me. He tried to break my sister. He tried to erase us, to convince the world and ourselves that we were worthless, that we deserved the treatment we received, that we should be grateful for whatever scraps of dignity he allowed us to keep." I pause, looking at Jasmine, at Evelyn, at the women in the audience who know exactly what I'm talking about, because they've lived it too. But we're still here. We survived. And we didn't just survive, we built something better than what was taken from us. This foundation exists because my mother worked night shifts in secret for 11 years to make sure I'd be okay. Because my sister found the courage to turn against the only family she'd ever known. Because a woman named Evelyn Carter saw a broken girl in a diner and decided she was worth saving. Baby Patricia makes a small sound, and Jasmine rocks her gently, and I think about generational trauma, and how we're breaking the cycle. How this little girl will grow up, knowing that women in our family don't accept abuse, don't stay silent, don't sacrifice themselves on the altar of keeping men comfortable. We're building something my father never could, I continue. A legacy of love, not fear. A legacy of helping instead of hurting. A legacy of lifting up instead of tearing down. And every woman who walks through these doors, every child who finds safety here, every life that gets rebuilt instead of destroyed, that's our answer to everyone who ever told us we were worthless. I look directly at the portrait of Mother, and I hope somehow she knows, hope she can see what her secret sacrifice created. They called me a failure, I say, my voice strong and clear. But I became everything they feared and everything I needed to be. And that's the real power, not what they took from me, but what I built because they did. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, it wasn't easy to live either. But I shared it because I believe that stories like mine need to be told. Too many women suffer in silence, believing they're alone, believing they deserve the abuse, believing there's no way out. If my story reaches even one person who needs to hear it, who needs to know that survival is possible, that rebuilding is possible, that becoming more than your trauma is possible, then every painful memory I revisited was worth it. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own family dynamics, or reminded you of someone you know who might need help, please subscribe to this channel and share this video. Your support helps stories like mine reach the people who need them most. Leave a comment below telling me what part of this journey affected you the most. Did you relate to the feeling of being cast out? Did Mother's secret sacrifice move you? Do you have your own story of resilience you'd like to share? I read every comment, and your words matter more than you know. The Resilient Phoenix Foundation is real, and we're helping women every single day. If you or someone you know needs resources, information is available. You don't have to suffer alone. You don't have to stay silent. And you certainly don't have to believe the people who tell you you're worthless. Remember this: they may call you a failure, but you have the power to define who you become. Not them. You. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and join us in building a legacy of love instead of fear. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. The chandeliers sparkled, the champagne flowed, and nobody recognized me. 10 years ago, I was thrown out of this family like trash. My father screamed that I was worthless, that I'd end up begging on the streets. My mother cried but said nothing. And my sister, she watched from the stairs silent as they slammed the door in my face. They called me the failure with no future. Tonight, I walked into my sister's wedding wearing a dress that cost more than their monthly mortgage. My heels clicked against marble floors they couldn't afford anymore. And when the guests whispered, trying to place my face, I smiled, because they had no idea who I'd become. The groom took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce someone very special, the CEO investing in our company's future." He said my name. The room went silent. Champagne glasses froze mid-air. My father's face drained of color. My mother's hands started shaking, and my sister, her perfect smile cracked like porcelain. 10 years ago, they destroyed me. Tonight, I owned them. But here's what they didn't know yet. I didn't just come back successful. I came back with secrets, secrets that would tear this family apart from the inside out. Secrets about who they really are, about what they did, about the lies they've been living. My mother whispered, "What have you done to us?" I leaned in close and said 5 words that changed everything: "What you made me become." Stay with me, because what happens next, nobody sees coming. Not the DNA test, not the murder plot, and definitely not the truth about my mother's broken wrist. This is a story of betrayal, revenge, and the lies families bury. And I'm about to dig them all up. My name is Monica Johnson. I'm 38 years old, and I'm the CEO of a tech investment firm worth over $10 billion. But 10 years ago, I was just a broken girl with a suitcase sleeping in her car, wondering if she'd ever be worth anything at all. Tonight, I'm about to find out if the people who destroyed me even recognize what I've become. The Atlanta Botanical Garden venue glows like something out of a fairy tale. String lights cascade from ancient oak trees, and the scent of gardenias hangs thick in the humid evening air. I step out of the black town car, and my Louboutin heels click against the cobblestone pathway. The dress I'm wearing is Valentino Midnight Black, elegant, and costs more than my father's monthly mortgage payment. I chose black deliberately, not for mourning, but for power. The moment I approach the entrance, I feel it. That shift in the air when someone who doesn't belong walks into a room. The young woman checking invitations looks at her list, then at me, confusion flickering across her face. I smile, calm, unbothered, and simply walk past her. She doesn't stop me. People rarely stop someone who moves with absolute certainty. Inside the reception hall, crystal chandeliers cast warm light across tables dressed in cream and gold. There must be 200 guests here, all mingling with champagne flutes and practiced laughter. I recognize some faces, distant cousins, family friends, people who used to pat my head when I was small. None of them recognize me. Why would they? The last time they saw me, I was 28. Mascara running down my face, begging my father not to throw me out. That girl is dead. The woman who replaced her is someone they can't even imagine. I scan the crowd, and there she is, Jasmine, my sister. She's radiant in her ivory wedding gown, all lace and tulle and princess dreams. Her skin glows under the lights, her smile is perfect, and she's surrounded by bridesmaids who fawn over her like she's royalty. She's always been the golden child, the one they kept, the one they loved. Watching her now, I feel something twist in my chest, not quite anger, not quite sadness, something colder. Then I see my parents. Father stands near the bar, his gray suit fitting poorly around his expanding waistline. He's laughing at something someone said, that same booming laugh I remember from childhood. Mother is beside him, wearing a pale pink dress and pearls. She looks older than I remember. Tired. Her hand rests on Father's arm, and even from here I can see it trembling slightly. Does she sense something? Does some part of her recognize me? I take a deliberate step forward, letting myself be visible. A server passes with a tray of champagne, and I take a glass, bringing it to my lips without drinking. Just holding it. Just existing in their space like I have every right to be here. That's when it happens. Mother's eyes find me across the room. For a moment she just stares, her brow furrowed like she's trying to solve a puzzle. Then something clicks. Her face goes pale. Her grip on Father's arm tightens so suddenly that he looks down at her, annoyed. She whispers something I can't hear. Father follows her gaze. When his eyes land on me, his expression shifts through several emotions at once: confusion, recognition, and then something that looks almost like fear. The whispers start. Cousins leaning into each other. Aunts clutching their purses a little tighter. Uncle Raymond squints at me like I'm a mirage. I hear fragments of conversation floating toward me. Is that? No, it can't be. But she looks exactly like... She looks too successful, too refined. Didn't they say she was living in her car? Jasmine hasn't noticed me yet. She's too busy posing for photos, laughing with her new husband. But the bridesmaids have noticed. One of them, I think her name is Brittany, leans in and whispers something in Jasmine's ear while gesturing vaguely in my direction. Jasmine's head turns. Her eyes find mine, and for just a split second her perfect smile falters. The light in her eyes dims. She knows. She knows exactly who I am. I don't move. I don't wave. I just hold her gaze calm and steady while chaos brews around me. Let her wonder. Let them all wonder. Let them panic and whisper and try to make sense of how the family failure, the girl they threw away like garbage, is standing in their midst wearing a dress that costs more than most of their cars. The chandelier above me is the same one that hung in our family home when I was 10. Mother sold it years ago when Father's business started failing. I bought it at auction 6 months ago and donated it to this venue. They're celebrating under a light I own. They just don't know it yet. Memories flood back uninvited. I see myself at 10 standing under that same chandelier blowing out birthday candles. Father's hand on my shoulder, proud. Mother's kiss on my forehead. Jasmine, just 8 years old, clapping her hands. We were happy once. Or maybe we just pretended to be. Maybe the cracks were always there, and I was just too young to see them. But I see them now. I see everything now. The groom, Darius, I think his name is, steps up to the microphone at the front of the room. The DJ lowers the music. Conversations die down as guests turn their attention to him. He's handsome in a practiced way with perfect teeth and slicked back hair. He smiles at the crowd like a politician. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his voice smooth and confident. "Thank you all so much for being here to celebrate this incredible day with us." Applause. Cheers. Jasmine beams at him from her seat at the head table. "Before we continue with dinner," Darius says, "I want to take a moment to introduce someone very special, someone whose support has meant everything to our future." My heart beats steady. I don't blink. She's the CEO of one of the most successful investment firms in the country, and she's graciously agreed to partner with us as we build our new venture. Father's face goes from pale to gray. Mother's hand flies to her mouth. "Please join me in welcoming the brilliant, the unstoppable..." He pauses for dramatic effect. "Monica Johnson." The room erupts in confused applause. Heads turn searching for me, and when they find me standing alone near the back glass of champagne in hand, chin raised, the applause falters. Whispers explode like wildfire. Jasmine's face drains of all color. Father looks like he might collapse, and Mother's eyes fill with tears, though I can't tell if they're from fear or regret. I smile. Not a warm smile. Not a forgiving smile. A smile that says exactly what I need it to say: I survived you. I conquered you. And now you'll see what you created when you threw me away. The applause dies like someone cut the oxygen from the room. For a moment, everything freezes. Champagne glasses hover mid-air, suspended in disbelief. A woman in an emerald dress has her mouth open, caught between a gasp and a laugh that will never come. The string quartet in the corner falters on a note, the violinist's bow scraping awkwardly as she loses her place. And in that terrible, beautiful silence, I watch my family's world tilt on its axis. Father's face drains of every last drop of color. His hand, which was raised in polite applause, drops to his side like dead weight. His eyes are wide pupils dilated, and I can see his throat working as he tries to swallow. He looks like a man who just watched his past rise from the grave and walk toward him wearing designer heels. Jasmine's perfect smile freezes on her face, stretched too tight, almost grotesque. Her hands are clasped together in front of her dress knuckles white. She's not breathing. I can see it from here. Her chest isn't moving. One of her bridesmaids reaches out to touch her arm, concerned, but Jasmine doesn't even blink. She's staring at me like I'm a ghost. Maybe to her I am. The whispers start as a low hum and build into a roar. "That Monica," someone hisses. "The one they..." But no one finishes the sentence. They don't have to. Everyone in this room knows the story. The daughter who defied the family. The daughter who was cast out. The daughter who was supposed to disappear into poverty and obscurity, never to be heard from again. Except here I am. Not just surviving. Thriving. Towering over them all in ways they never imagined possible. I stand perfectly still, letting the revelation sink in like poison. I don't smile anymore. I don't need to. My presence is the statement. My silence is the weapon. Aunt Carol clutches Uncle Raymond's arm, her diamond rings catching the light. Cousin Marcus has his phone out, probably already Googling my name. I wonder what he'll find. Forbes profile. Wall Street Journal interview. The TechCrunch article that called me the most formidable deal-maker under 40. The memory hits me without warning, vivid and vicious. 10 years ago. Not this glittering ballroom, but our family living room with its worn carpet and the smell of my mother's pot roast still hanging in the air. I was 28 years old, standing in the center of that room like a defendant awaiting sentencing. Father's face was red veins bulging in his neck as he shouted words that would brand themselves into my memory forever. "You're worthless, absolutely worthless. You think you can defy this family and still have a place here? His finger jabbed toward me with each word sharp as a knife. You'll never amount to anything, Monica. You're selfish, ungrateful, and you're no daughter of mine. I had tried to explain, tried to tell him that I couldn't marry the man he'd chosen for me, that I had my own dreams, my own plans, but my words meant nothing. They never did. Mother sat in the corner of the room in her floral armchair, tears streaming silently down her face, but she said nothing. Not one word in my defense, not one plea for mercy on my behalf. She just sat there watching her husband destroy her daughter, and she let it happen. And Jasmine. Jasmine stood on the stairs in her college sweatshirt, arms crossed, watching the whole thing unfold like it was a television drama that didn't concern her. Our eyes met once. Just once. I silently begged her to say something, to stand up for me, to remind Father that we were sisters, that we were supposed to protect each other. But she looked away. She turned her back and walked up those stairs, and I heard her bedroom door click shut like the final nail in my coffin. Father grabbed my arm so hard it left bruises that lasted for weeks. He dragged me to the front door, threw it open, and hurled my suitcase onto the lawn. It burst open on impact, my clothes spilling across the grass. "Get out," he said, his voice cold now, almost calm. "Get out and don't ever come back. You're dead to this family." The door slammed. I stood on that lawn for what felt like hours, numb, broken, unable to process that my entire life had just been erased. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Mrs. Chen from next door came out to her porch, started to say something, then thought better of it and went back inside. No one helped. No one cared. I was alone. I snapped back to the present, to this glittering room full of people who are just now realizing what they're looking at. My hands are steady. My breathing is controlled. I've spent 10 years building this armor, and it's impenetrable now. Nothing they say or do can touch me anymore. Mother moves first. She detaches herself from Father's side and walks toward me, her steps unsteady in her kitten heels. Up close, I can see the mascara smudged beneath her eyes, the foundation settling into the lines around her mouth. She looks older than 56, worn down, tired in a way that goes deeper than lack of sleep. "Monica," she whispers, and her voice cracks on my name. Her hands reach out trembling, but she doesn't quite touch me. "What are you doing here? How did you... we didn't know you were..." She can't finish a single thought. Her eyes search my face, desperately looking for the daughter she knew. But that girl is gone. I meet her gaze with a calm that I know must feel dangerous. I've practiced this look in mirrors, in boardrooms, and negotiations where showing weakness meant losing everything. My voice when I speak is soft, almost kind. That makes it worse. "Hello, Mother." She flinches at the formality, at the distance in those two words. "I don't understand," she says, her voice barely audible over the growing murmur of the crowd. "You're a CEO. You have money, but how we thought you were..." She stops herself, but I know what she almost said. "We thought you were nothing." "Surprised?" I ask, and there's an edge to my voice now sharp enough to draw blood. "Did you think I'd stay broken forever, that I'd wither away and die like you all wanted?" "That's not fair," Mother says, but there's no conviction behind the words. She knows it's true. They all wanted me gone, erased, forgotten. Father has moved closer now, hovering behind Mother like a shadow. He doesn't speak, but I can see the wheels turning in his head. He's calculating, already trying to figure out how to spin this, how to use me, how to benefit from the daughter he threw away. Some things never change. Jasmine finally moves from her spot at the head table. She weaves through guests, her dress rustling, her face pale but composed. She's always been good at putting on a show. When she reaches us, she forces a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Monica," she says, and her voice is sugar-sweet with an undercurrent of venom. "What a surprise. We had no idea you'd be here." "Didn't you?" I say, looking at her husband, who's still standing by the microphone, looking pleased with himself. "Your husband invited me." Something flashes in Jasmine's eyes. Confusion, betrayal. She looks back at Darius, and I can see the questions forming. But this isn't the time or place for a marital argument. Not yet. Mother's composure is crumbling now. Tears well up in her eyes, and her voice drops to a desperate whisper that only I can hear. What have you done to us? I turn toward her slowly, deliberately, and lean in close enough that I can smell her perfume. The same perfume she wore when she watched father destroy me. The same perfume she wore when she chose silence over her daughter. My voice is soft as silk when I answer each word carefully chosen to cut as deeply as possible. What you made me become. The words hang in the air between us, and I watch Mother's face crumple like paper. But I feel nothing. No satisfaction. No regret. Just the cold, hard truth of what happened 10 years ago playing in my mind like a film I've watched 1,000 times but can never forget. It was a Tuesday night in March when they gathered to decide my fate. I remember because it was supposed to be my birthday dinner. I'd turned 28 that day, and Mother had promised my favorite meal, herb-roasted chicken with her special potatoes. Instead, when I walked into the dining room, I found a tribunal waiting for me. Father sat at the head of the table like a judge preparing to deliver a sentence. Uncle Raymond was to his right, arms crossed over his chest, already nodding along to words that hadn't been spoken yet. Aunt Linda sat across from him, her eyes fixed on her plate, unable or unwilling to meet my gaze. Jasmine perched on the edge of her chair near the window, her face carefully blank, and Mother stood by the china cabinet, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Sit down, Monica," Father said, his voice carrying that particular tone of authority he used when he expected absolute obedience. I sat my stomach nodding with a dread I couldn't quite name yet. The birthday cake Mother had baked sat untouched on the sideboard candles, unlit my name, written in pink frosting that now felt like a mockery. Father didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We need to discuss your future," he began, and I knew immediately this wasn't a discussion. It was a proclamation. The Henderson family has made a generous offer. Their son Richard is interested in marrying you. This union would save our business, secure our family's standing in the community, and finally give you some purpose beyond your ridiculous ideas about graduate school. I felt the blood drain from my face. Richard Henderson was 43 years old, twice divorced, and had a reputation in Atlanta's business circles that made my skin crawl. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You want me to marry him? I don't even know him. I don't love him." "Love," Father spat the word like it was poison. "You think love pays bills. You think love saves a failing company. You're 28 years old, Monica. You've wasted enough time on your selfish dreams. This is about family. This is about duty." "I won't do it," I said, finding strength in my voice I didn't know I possessed. "I have plans. I've been accepted to plans." Father's fist slammed onto the table, making the silverware jump. "You have plans, you're selfish, Monica. Ungrateful for everything we've given you. Your sister understands sacrifice. She understands what it means to put family first." I turned to Jasmine, then silently begging her to say something, anything. We'd always been close, or so I thought. We'd shared secrets, stayed up late, talking about our dreams, promised to always have each other's backs. But Jasmine just looked at me with something that might have been pity, or might have been relief that she wasn't the one sitting in my chair. She stayed silent, and I realized with crushing clarity that my rebellion was benefiting her. If I refused to be the sacrificial daughter, maybe she'd never have to be. Uncle Raymond cleared his throat. "Your father's right, Monica. Sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do. That's what being an adult means. That's what being part of this family means." Aunt Linda still wouldn't look at me, but I saw her hand move to her napkin, twisting it between her fingers. She knew this was wrong. I could see it in the set of her shoulders, the way she seemed to be trying to disappear into her chair. But she said nothing. No one defended me. No one stood up and said this was insane, that you can't sell your daughter like property, that this was supposed to be my birthday dinner, not my execution. "I won't marry him," I said again, standing up from the table. "I'm sorry if that disappoints you, but I have my own life to live. I'm not a bargaining chip." The room erupted. Father's face turned purple with rage. Uncle Raymond stood up shouting about disrespect and ingratitude. Even Aunt Linda finally spoke, her voice thin and wavering, saying something about how marriage wasn't always about love, how she'd learned to be content, how I needed to think about others for once. But it was Mother's reaction that I'll never forget. While everyone else yelled, she just stood there by the china cabinet, tears streaming down her face. Not angry tears. Something else. Something I couldn't identify then. Her hands were shaking and she'd hidden them behind her back like she was trying to hold herself together. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear over the chaos. I watched her mouth, trying to read what she was saying. "I'm sorry. I have to." I couldn't be sure. Father grabbed my arm with a grip that would leave finger-shaped bruises I'd carry for weeks. "If you walk out that door," he said, his voice deadly quiet now, "you're no longer part of this family. No money, no home, no name. You'll be nothing. Do you understand me? Nothing." I looked at Mother one last time. Our eyes met, and for just a second I thought she might step forward, might finally speak up, might choose her daughter over her husband. But she turned away. She physically turned her back on me as Father dragged me toward the front door. My suitcase was already packed. Someone had gone through my room while I was out that day and thrown my belongings into it. The zipper was broken closed, spilling out the sides. Father shoved it into my hands and pushed me out into the March night. The cold hit me like a slap and I stumbled on the front steps, catching myself on the railing. The last thing I saw before the door slammed was Jasmine still sitting at the table watching through the dining room doorway. She didn't wave goodbye. She didn't cry. She just watched me disappear from her life like I was a television show she'd gotten bored with. I stood on the lawn in the darkness, clutching my broken suitcase, trying to understand that my entire existence had just been erased. When I finally moved, when I finally made myself walk to my car parked at the curb, I shoved my hands into my coat pockets against the cold. That's when I felt it. Bills. Cash. I pulled it out under the streetlight and counted $200 in 20s folded small and tight. Mother must have slipped it in when no one was looking. It was the only thing she could give me. The only way she could help without risking Father's wrath. There was something else in my suitcase when I opened it later that night, parked in a grocery store parking lot with nowhere else to go. Mother's Bible. The leather one she'd had since she was a girl, with her maiden name embossed on the cover. Tucked inside, marking Psalms, was a note in her careful handwriting on the back of a grocery receipt. Just 2 words: "Forgive me." I didn't understand it then. I was too angry, too hurt, too devastated to see it as anything but a pathetic excuse. I slept in that car for 3 weeks, working double shifts at an all-night diner off Highway 85, my back aching, my pride shattered. Former friends who heard I'd been disowned would come in with their perfect lives and their pity, leaving dollar tips and concerned looks that felt more like mockery than kindness. But now, standing in this reception hall 10 years later, watching Mother's tears fall onto her expensive dress, I finally understand what she whispered that night. Not, "I'm sorry," or "I have to." It was, "Forgive me." She'd been asking for forgiveness even then, knowing what she was about to allow, knowing she wasn't strong enough to stop it, knowing she was choosing survival over her daughter. And maybe that's the cruelest part of all. I never did forgive her. Not then. Not for years after. Because forgiveness requires understanding, and I was too busy surviving to understand anything beyond the next shift, the next dollar, the next night in my car trying to sleep while semis rumbled past on the highway. 6 months after that terrible night, I was working the graveyard shift at Rosie's Diner off exit 47. The uniform didn't fit right because it belonged to a girl named Tammy who'd quit without notice, and the manager gave me her old clothes because I couldn't afford my own. The polyester dress hung loose on my shrinking frame, and the apron had a coffee stain I couldn't scrub out no matter how hard I tried. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed someone I barely recognized. Dark circles carved deep under my eyes. cheekbones, too prominent hair pulled back in a ponytail that did nothing to hide how badly I needed a real shower instead of the sink baths I took in gas station restrooms. Tips were terrible on weeknight shifts. Truckers mostly, and the occasional drunk stumbling in from the bar next door. They'd leave crumpled singles, sometimes just change barely enough to cover the gas I burned driving between this job and my morning position at a dry cleaner across town. The other waitresses, Sheila and Pam, both mothers with custody arrangements and child support checks, would talk about their kids' soccer games and their ex-husbands and what they were making for Sunday dinner. I'd refill the ketchup bottles and say nothing. I'd learned that invisible was safer. Invisible didn't invite questions about why I lived in a 1998 Honda Civic with a broken passenger window I'd covered with duct tape and plastic. It was a Tuesday morning, nearly 2 o'clock, when she walked in. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up from wiping down the counter to see an elegant black woman in a camel-colored coat, her silver hair cut in a sleek bob that probably cost more than I made in a month. She carried herself with the kind of posture that spoke of ballet lessons and boarding schools of a life lived with intention and grace. She was completely out of place in Rosie's diner with its cracked vinyl booths and flickering fluorescent lights. Yet she walked to a corner booth like she owned it. I grabbed a menu and a pot of coffee, forcing my exhausted body to move with something resembling professionalism. "Good evening," I said, my voice hoarse from lack of use. "Can I get you some coffee?" "Please," she said, and her voice was warm, molasses rich and smooth. She was reading the Wall Street Journal actual newsprint in a world where everyone else stared at phones. "And take your time with the menu. I'm in no rush." I poured her coffee and retreated, grateful she didn't want to chat. But I felt her watching me as I moved through my section. When a drunk man in a stained Georgia Bulldogs shirt started giving me trouble about his eggs, too runny, too hard, too something demanding. I take them back for the third time while his friends laughed. I felt her eyes on me. I kept my voice level, kept my face neutral, apologized for the inconvenience, even though the eggs were fine and we both knew it. I'd learned that fighting back only made things worse, that men like him fed on reaction, that the best way to win was to give them nothing. After I finally got rid of him, leaving no tip. Naturally, I found myself at her table again. "Ready to order?" I asked, pulling my order pad from my apron. "Sit down," she said, and it wasn't a request so much as an expectation that I would comply. Something in her tone made me obey, sliding into the booth across from her despite the fact that Sheila was shooting me looks from across the diner. "What's your name?" "Monica," I said, too tired to lie. "Monica." She tested it on her tongue like she was tasting wine. "I'm Evelyn Carter, and I've been sitting here for an hour watching you handle customers with more grace and professionalism than I see from executives making 6 figures. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest with me. What's your story?" The question hit me harder than it should have. Maybe because no one had asked me about myself in months. Maybe because I was so tired of pretending I was fine. Maybe because something in her eyes told me she already knew I was broken and wasn't going to judge me for it. "I don't have a story," I said, which was the biggest lie I'd ever told. "Everyone has a story, baby." She pushed her untouched coffee toward me. "Drink. You look like you need it more than I do. And then tell me why a girl with your intelligence and bearing is working graveyard shifts in a highway diner." So I told her. Not everything. I wasn't ready for everything, but enough. I told her about being cast out, about the car, about trying to save enough money for a deposit on an apartment, but never quite getting there because something always came up, always cost more than I planned. I told her about the shame of being disowned, about former friends who crossed the street to avoid me, about the way my family's rejection had branded me as someone not worth knowing. Evelyn listened without interrupting, her dark eyes fixed on my face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. When I finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I built a tech company in the 90s, she said finally, her voice softer now, almost distant. "Started in my garage with nothing but a computer and an idea. 10 years later, I was worth $50 million. They called me a pioneer. Put me on magazine covers, asked me to speak at conferences." She paused, and something flickered across her face, pain old and deep. I had a son, beautiful boy, smart as a whip, curious about everything. His father and I divorced when he was 5, and it got ugly. Real ugly. The kind of ugly where lawyers get rich and children get destroyed. I watched her hands tremble slightly as she lifted her coffee cup, watched the way her jaw tightened like she was physically holding back tears. He took my boy, changed his name, moved states. I looked for him for 15 years, Monica. Hired investigators, spent everything I had, called in every favor, chased every lead that went nowhere. Her eyes met mine, and I saw my own devastation reflected there. He'd be about your age now, 30, maybe 31. And I had to stop looking because it was killing me. Because at some point you have to choose between destroying yourself searching for what's lost or building something new with what remains. The understanding that passed between us in that moment needed no words. We were both women who'd lost everything. Both women who'd been abandoned by the people who were supposed to love us most. Both women who'd learned that survival meant becoming someone new. Evelyn leaned across the table then, and something fierce ignited in her eyes, something that looked like determination and fury and hope all mixed together. "You've got fire behind all that hurt, baby," she said, her voice dropping to just above a whisper, but somehow more powerful for it. "I can see it. Most people would have given up by now. But you're still standing, still fighting, still here." She reached across the table and took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Let's build something from it." I said yes without knowing what I was agreeing to. But when you've hit rock bottom, when you're sleeping in your car and washing your hair in gas station sinks, you don't question the hand that reaches down to pull you up. You just grab it and hold on. Evelyn's mentorship wasn't what I expected. There was no formal office, no structured curriculum, no business school lectures about market analysis and profit margins. Instead, we met in coffee shops where she'd quiz me on reading body language. We'd sit on park benches while she taught me the difference between confidence and arrogance, between knowing your worth and announcing it. Her living room became my classroom, her kitchen table, my boardroom, and the lessons she taught me had nothing to do with spreadsheets and everything to do with survival. "They're going to underestimate you," she said one afternoon as we sat in Piedmont Park watching joggers circle the lake. "Young, female, no pedigree, no connections. They'll look at you and see someone they can dismiss, someone they can talk over, someone who doesn't belong in their world." She turned to face me, her expression fierce. "When they underestimate you, smile. Let them think they've already won. Then take everything." She taught me to weaponize the very things people used to diminish me. My youth became fresh perspective. My lack of traditional credentials became innovative thinking unconstrained by outdated methods. My outsider status became the ability to see solutions others missed because they were too embedded in the old ways of doing things. Evelyn showed me that the assumptions people made about me weren't weaknesses to overcome, but tools to exploit. "Read the room before you enter it," she'd say. "Know who needs to be impressed, who needs to be placated, who holds the real power regardless of their title. Watch their hands. Listen to what they don't say. People will always tell you the truth if you're patient enough to hear it." My first real test came 3 months into our arrangement. Evelyn had secured a pitch meeting with a mid-sized investment firm looking to diversify their tech portfolio. She introduced me as her associate, and we walked into a conference room where 5 white men in identical navy suits sat around a table with their arms crossed, like they were already bored. The interruptions started before I finished my second sentence. "Actually, what you need to understand is," one of them said, cutting me off mid-explanation. Another leaned back in his chair and addressed Evelyn directly as if I wasn't even there. "Is she really qualified for this kind of analysis? No offense, but this is pretty complex stuff." I felt myself shrinking, felt the old shame creeping up my spine, felt the voice in my head that sounded like my father telling me I wasn't good enough, would never be good enough. But then I felt Evelyn's hand on mine under the table, a brief squeeze that said, "Stand your ground." I straightened my spine, held eye contact with the man who'd questioned my qualifications, and let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. As I was saying, I continued, my voice calm and clear. Your current portfolio is overexposed in legacy systems and underinvested in emerging markets. Your returns reflect that. I pulled up the slides I'd prepared and proceeded to demolish their numbers with precision that left no room for argument. Every interruption I met with data, every dismissive look I countered with facts. By the end of the presentation, the room was silent in a completely different way. We didn't get that contract. But Evelyn smiled at me in the elevator afterward and said, "You just passed the real test, the one where you prove to yourself that you belong." The contract that changed everything came 2 months later. A tech company CEO named Marcus Webb had reached out through Evelyn's network, desperate for help. His company was hemorrhaging money, his board was in revolt, and he needed a turnaround strategy yesterday. Evelyn brought me along as her consultant, though it was clear from the moment we walked into his office that Webb saw me as something between a secretary and a curiosity. He shook Evelyn's hand warmly, barely glanced at me, and proceeded to mansplain his own business for 45 minutes while I took notes. He interrupted me when I tried to ask clarifying questions, told me not to worry my pretty head about the technical aspects, and actually patted my hand at one point like I was a child who'd asked a cute but irrelevant question. I let him talk, let him assume, let him feel superior and in control. And I took notes on everything he said, cataloging every contradiction, every blind spot, every place where his ego had created vulnerabilities in his business model. When he finally wound down, I opened my laptop and walked him through the strategy I'd already developed. I'd spent 3 weeks analyzing his company from every angle, identifying the core problems he was too proud to see. His platform was solid, but his customer acquisition cost was unsustainable. His retention strategy was non-existent. His pricing model was leaving millions on the table. I showed him exactly how to fix it step by step with projections that were conservative enough to be credible and ambitious enough to save his company. Webb stared at the screen, his expression cycling through surprise, skepticism, and finally grudging respect. "This is actually brilliant," he said, and I could hear the reluctance in his admission. "How did you see all this?" "By listening," I said simply. He tried to take credit for it later, of course. Told his board the turnaround strategy was a collaborative effort, emphasized his own insights, minimized my role. But I'd learned from Evelyn to always get it in writing. The contract had my name on it. The recommendations were time-stamped and documented. When the strategy worked and his company's value doubled in 6 months, everyone in the industry knew exactly who'd saved Marcus Webb from his own arrogance. That contract led to 3 more, then 10, then 20. Evelyn and I built a consulting practice that specialized in companies others had written off, in problems others said were unsolvable. We developed a reputation for seeing what others missed, for turning failures into successes, for being the last call desperate CEOs made when they'd run out of options. It was during one of those routine background checks weeks after the Webb contract closed that I discovered something that made my blood run cold. I was researching his company's parent corporation, tracing the ownership structure for due diligence, when I saw a name I recognized. The holding company that owned Marcus Webb's firm was registered under a new name restructured after bankruptcy, but the principal shareholder was listed clearly in the documents. My father's name stared back at me from the screen, and I realized with a shock that felt like ice water in my veins, that I'd just saved his company without even knowing it. The man who'd thrown me away, who'd told me I'd never amount to anything, had just been rescued by the daughter he'd erased. And he had no idea. The discovery sat in my chest like a stone for 3 days before I told Evelyn. We were in her study, rain drumming against the windows, when I finally showed her the documents. She read them twice, her reading glasses perched on her nose, before she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I said, but that was a lie. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. The call came 6 months later. My assistant Sarah knocked on my office door with an unusual hesitancy, holding a file folder like it might explode. "There's a company requesting emergency funding," she said. "Johnson and Associates. They're in bad shape, drowning in debt. The owner is asking for a meeting." I took the folder from her hands and opened it slowly, though I already knew what I'd find. My father's company, the one he'd built on the backs of employees he underpaid and partners he'd cheated, was collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. Years of bad decisions, risky investments, and ethical shortcuts had finally caught up with him. The financials were a disaster. He was 3 months from bankruptcy, maybe less. "Tell them we're interested," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "But I want to handle this one personally. Set up the paperwork through Resilient Phoenix Holdings." Sarah nodded, used to my occasionally cryptic instructions. She didn't know that Resilient Phoenix was one of several shell companies I'd created specifically for investments I wanted to keep separate from my public profile. She didn't know that the name was my private joke, a reminder of what I'd risen from. The negotiations took 2 months. Father's lawyers were desperate, willing to accept terms that any competent businessman would have recognized as predatory. But Father wasn't competent anymore if he ever had been. He was drowning, and he was grabbing at any lifeline thrown his way without questioning where it came from or what it would cost him. I structured the deal through layers of trusts and holding companies, each one leading back to another, a maze of corporate entities that would take a forensic accountant months to untangle. Father signed papers without reading them carefully, his hands shaking with what I assumed was fear of losing everything he'd built. His lawyers advised him to accept, told him this was his only option, that the mysterious investor behind Resilient Phoenix Holdings was being generous given the circumstances. Generous. The word made me want to laugh. By the time the final contracts were executed, I owned 51% of Johnson and Associates. Controlling interest. The proud patriarch who'd thrown me out for being worthless now worked for me his failure of a daughter, and he had no idea. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. I attended the board meetings remotely, my video camera always off, my voice disguised through software that made me sound like a man with a British accent. I watched Father squirm in his chair as the board asked increasingly pointed questions about his management decisions. I watched him bluster and make excuses, watched him try to maintain the authority he no longer possessed. And when he proposed something particularly stupid, something that would have hurt the employees who'd stayed loyal despite his terrible leadership, I voted against him through my proxies and watched his proposal die. There was a twisted satisfaction in it that I'm not proud of, but won't pretend I didn't feel. Every time he made a decision, I held the power to allow it or block it. When he tried to fire Elizabeth Chen, a 58-year-old accountant, who'd worked for him for 20 years because he wanted to replace her with someone younger and cheaper, I made sure the board rejected his recommendation. When he proposed cutting the modest health insurance contribution to save money, I ensured the cuts came from executive perks instead. I was the invisible hand guiding his company, protecting it from his worst impulses, and he had no idea his erased daughter was the one keeping his legacy alive. Some nights I'd pull up the board meeting recordings and watch them again, studying his face for signs that he suspected something. But he never did. It never occurred to him that the daughter he'd cast out might have become powerful enough to own him. In his mind, I was probably still serving coffee somewhere, still struggling, still nothing. The company stabilized under my hidden guidance. Profits improved. Employee satisfaction scores rose. The business press started calling it a remarkable turnaround, praising the mysterious investor who'd saved Johnson and Associates from ruin. Father gave interviews taking credit for the recovery, talking about his resilience and business acumen, never once acknowledging that someone else was making the decisions that saved him. I let him have his delusions. For now. It was a Tuesday afternoon, almost 9 years to the day since he'd thrown me out, when Sarah knocked on my door again. This time she was holding an envelope, cream-colored and expensive, the kind used for wedding invitations. "This just came by courier," she said, setting it on my desk. "It's addressed to Resilient Phoenix Holdings, attention CEO, personal and confidential." I opened it after she left my hands steadier than they should have been. The invitation was elegant, all calligraphy and gold embossing. Mr. and Mrs. Richard Johnson request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter Jasmine Marie Johnson to Mr. Darius Alexander Pierce. Reception to follow at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. There was a handwritten note paper-clipped to the invitation written in a masculine scrawl I didn't recognize. We would be honored to have you attend. I've heard so much about your work and would love the opportunity to meet the person behind Resilient Phoenix in person. This seems like the perfect occasion. Please say you'll come. Darius Pierce. Sarah appeared in my doorway again, slightly breathless. Ma'am, I just got off the phone with Mr. Pierce's office. He's asking if you received the invitation. He seems very eager for you to attend. He specifically mentioned wanting to meet his mysterious investor in person at his wedding in Atlanta. I stared at the invitation for a long moment, my sister's name printed in flowing script, my parents' names at the top, like they were still the pillars of society they'd once pretended to be. The wedding was in 6 weeks. 6 weeks to decide if I was ready to walk back into the family that had erased me not as the failure they'd discarded, but as the woman who owned them. I looked up at Sarah and smiled. RSVP, yes, and book me a suite at the Four Seasons. I think it's time I attended a family reunion. The chaos after Darius's announcement takes about 10 minutes to settle. 10 minutes of whispers and stares and confusion before the wedding coordinator, a stressed woman with a clipboard, appears at my elbow and informs me that my seat assignment has been updated. She leads me through the reception hall past tables marked with elegant calligraphy cards reading family, college friends, business associates, until we reach the very back of the room tucked behind a decorative column that partially obscures the view of the head table. The place card reads, Distant Relative, in that same elegant script, and I almost laugh at the audacity of it. They've acknowledged my presence, announced me as their CEO investor, but they still can't bring themselves to give me a seat that matters. The table is populated with people who look as confused about their placement as I should be a great-aunt's neighbor, a college roommate's boyfriend, a second cousin twice removed who I vaguely remember from a funeral 15 years ago. These are the forgotten guests the obligation invites the people who don't quite fit anywhere else. I sit down with a smile that probably looks serene but feels like victory. The message is clear. You're not one of us. You don't belong. We're only tolerating you because we have to. But what they don't understand is that I stopped wanting to be one of them a long time ago. This table, this dismissal, this petty attempt to put me in my place only confirms what I already know: they haven't changed at all. And that makes what comes next so much easier. The man to my left tries to make conversation, asking how I know the family. I'm the bride's sister, I say simply, and watch his confusion deepen as he tries to reconcile that relationship with our table's location. He gives up and focuses on his salad instead. From my partially hidden vantage point, I can observe without being constantly observed. I watch Aunt Carol lean into Uncle Raymond's ear, her lips moving rapidly, her expression pinched with disapproval. I can't hear what she's saying, but I can guess sleeping her way to the top probably, or she must have connections we don't know about, or there's no way she built that kind of success legitimately. The narrative they're constructing doesn't allow for the possibility that I simply worked harder, smarter, and with more integrity than any of them ever have. My cousins clustered at a table marked Extended Family have their phones out. I watch them angle their cameras in my direction, pretending to take selfies, but actually photographing my dress, my jewelry, my hair. By tomorrow, those photos will be on social media with captions analyzing every choice I made, finding flaws, asserting their superiority in the only way they know how, tearing down someone else to build themselves up. Father has positioned himself at the bar, his back deliberately turned to my section of the room. He's talking too loud, laughing too hard, performing normalcy for anyone watching. But I can see the tension in his shoulders, the way he grips his whiskey glass, like it's the only thing keeping him upright. He refuses to look in my direction, and that refusal is its own kind of acknowledgement. Jasmine holds court at the head table, surrounded by bridesmaids in dusty rose dresses who hang on her every word. She's laughing at something, her head thrown back, the picture of bridal joy. But the laughter is too loud, too performative, and when she thinks no one is watching her, smile falters, and her eyes scan the room with something that looks like panic. She's performing happiness for an audience, and I recognize the act because I've done it myself. The difference is I stopped pretending years ago. But it's Mother who keeps drawing my attention. She sits at the family table, barely touching her food, her hands folded in her lap so tightly her knuckles have gone white. Every few minutes she glances toward my table with an expression I can't quite read. Anxiety, certainly. Fear, maybe. But there's something else beneath it, something that looks almost like longing or regret. Our eyes meet once and she looks away so quickly I might have imagined the whole thing. I use the time to really look at Jasmine, to study my sister with the detachment that distance and years have given me. Something about her has always been different, though I never could articulate what. She's beautiful in a way that doesn't quite match either parent. Mother has soft features and warm brown eyes. Father has sharp angles and a prominent nose. Jasmine has delicate bone structure, a small upturned nose, eyes that are more hazel than brown. Her build is petite where Mother is tall and Father is broad. Even her mannerisms seem borrowed from someone else's genetic code. A memory surfaces unbidden. I must have been 13. Jasmine 11, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while Mother prepared dinner. Jasmine had been upset about something, crying over a math problem she couldn't solve, and Mother had gathered her close and said, "You're my miracle baby, Jasmine. My special gift." At the time, I'd felt the sting of favoritism, the implication that I was ordinary while Jasmine was extraordinary. But now, with adult eyes and years of distance, the phrasing seems odd. Not my miracle, but my miracle baby. Not special like talented or smart, but special in a way that suggested something else entirely. I'm still turning that memory over in my mind, examining it from new angles when I sense someone approaching my table. I look up and find Darius Pierce standing there, the groom himself, holding 2 champagne flutes and wearing a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. He's handsome in an aggressive way, with perfect teeth and hair that's been styled within an inch of its life. But there's something in his expression that sets off alarm bells, a calculating quality that reminds me of the sharks I deal with in boardrooms. He extends one of the champagne flutes toward me, and when he speaks, his voice carries a knowing quality that makes my skin prickle with unease. "You remember me, don't you?" I take the champagne flute from his hand, buying myself a moment to process his question. My mind races backward through years of memories, searching for his face, and then it clicks into place with a jolt that I carefully don't let show on my face. 12 years ago. I was 26, still working in Father's company, still trying to prove myself worthy of a family that would never see me as anything but expendable. Darius had been brought in as a consultant, one of those smooth-talking strategists who moved between companies, leaving behind PowerPoint presentations and inflated invoices. We'd met during a late night at the office, both of us working past midnight on different projects. He'd bought me coffee from the vending machine and made me laugh with his impression of our pompous department head. We dated quietly for 3 months. Nothing serious, or so I thought. Coffee dates that turned into dinners, walks through Piedmont Park, a weekend trip to Savannah that felt like playing at being adults with real lives and real futures. He was charming in an effortless way, the kind of man who always knew the right thing to say, who made you feel seen and interesting and special. But there was always something slightly performative about it, like he was playing a role he'd rehearsed. Then came the night Father threw me out, and Darius vanished like smoke. No phone calls, no texts, no explanation. I'd tried to reach him in those early, desperate days, looking for anyone who might offer support or shelter, or just a kind word. But his number went to voicemail. His emails bounced back, and when I drove past his apartment building, the doorman told me he'd moved out weeks ago. At the time, I assumed he'd been embarrassed by my fall from grace, that associating with the family outcast was bad for his consulting career. I added him to the list of people who'd abandoned me and tried to forget he'd ever existed. But here he is, married to my sister, asking if I remember him like we shared some meaningful secret. Darius Pierce, I say slowly, keeping my voice neutral. You worked for Stratton Consulting. You left Atlanta pretty abruptly, as I recall. His smile widens, pleased that I've placed him. I did. Had an opportunity in Chicago that was too good to pass up. He gestures to the empty chair beside me. May I? I nod, curious where this is going, and he sits down with the ease of someone who's never been made to feel unwelcome anywhere. Up close, I can see he's aged well, the kind of aging that comes from expensive skincare and regular personal training sessions. But there's something harder in his eyes than I remember, something calculating beneath the charm. The invitation was no accident, he says, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. I requested your firm specifically when I learned about the investment opportunity with your father's company. I wanted you here, Monica. I've followed your career over the years. Very impressive what you've built. From nothing to a $10 billion empire. He raises his champagne flute in a mock toast. Remarkable transformation. My guard goes up like a steel wall. Nothing about his smile feels genuine. Nothing about this conversation feels safe. Why? I ask bluntly. Why would you want me at your wedding? Why track my career? We barely knew each other, and you disappeared the moment things got difficult. Did I? He tilts his head, studying me like I'm a puzzle he's trying to solve. Or did I leave right on schedule, exactly when I was supposed to? Before I can ask what that means, he shifts in his chair and something catches the light on his left hand. Not his wedding band, but another ring on his right hand, silver and unusual in design. It's old-fashioned, intricately carved with symbols I don't recognize, the kind of jewelry that speaks of inheritance rather than purchase. That's an interesting ring, I say, latching onto the change of subject while my mind processes his cryptic words. Family heirloom. His hand moves instinctively to cover it, a protective gesture that happens too quickly to be casual. Something like that. Family thing. Not important. But the way he says it makes it clear it's very important, and he has no intention of explaining why. He changes the subject with the skill of someone who's had practice redirecting uncomfortable questions. I'm more interested in talking about you, about what you've accomplished, about what you could still accomplish if you wanted to. There's an undertone to his words that I don't like, a suggestion of something lurking beneath the surface of this conversation. What exactly are you suggesting, Darius? He leans back in his chair, his smile never wavering, but his eyes have gone cold in a way that makes my instincts scream danger. I'm suggesting that you and I might have common interests, common goals. I know what they did to you, Monica. I know how they threw you away like you were nothing. And I know you own controlling interest in your father's company, even if he doesn't know it yet. He pauses, letting that sink in, confirming that he knows far more than he should. I also know that you could destroy them all with what you know, with what you have access to. The question is, are you going to? The reception continues around us, glasses clinking and conversations flowing, but I feel like we've entered a separate reality where the normal rules don't apply. And what's your interest in whether I do or don't? Let's just say I have my own reasons for wanting to see certain people get what they deserve. His voice drops lower, intimate and conspiratorial. Your father, your mother, this whole family built on lies and appearances. They deserve to fall, Monica. And you're perfectly positioned to push them. I study his face, looking for the motivation behind this sudden alliance offer. You married into this family. Why would you want to destroy it? Who says I married into it for love? He shrugs, and there's something cruel in the gesture. Maybe I married into it for access, for position, for the perfect vantage point to watch it all come apart. He leans in closer, voice dropping to barely above a whisper. You could destroy them all, you know. This whole family. Every lie they've told, every person they've hurt, every secret they've buried. You have the power and the knowledge. All you need is the will to use it. His breath is warm against my ear as he adds, his voice soft as silk and twice as dangerous. And I can help you do it. I pull back slightly, creating distance between us, and take a deliberate sip of champagne to give myself time to think. Darius's words hang in the air like bait on a hook, tempting and dangerous in equal measure. Every instinct I've honed over 10 years of surviving in cutthroat boardrooms tells me this man is playing a game I don't fully understand yet. You seem remarkably well informed about my business affairs, I say carefully, keeping my voice low enough that the other forgotten guests at our table can't hear. Most people don't know about Resilient Phoenix Holdings, let alone its connection to other entities. Darius's smile takes on a sharper edge. I have my sources. Good ones. I know about the shell companies, the layered trusts, the way you structured the buyout to keep your identity hidden. Resilient Phoenix New Dawn Ventures, Second Chance Capital. He ticks them off on his fingers like he's reading from a spreadsheet. Very clever the way you threaded it all together. Your father signed away his company to his own daughter and never even knew it. He leans forward, elbows on the table, his expression somewhere between admiration and something darker. I also know what they did to you. How they threw you out with nothing. How your father told you you'd never amount to anything. How your mother just stood there and let it happen. The fact that he knows these details sends a chill down my spine. These aren't things I've shared publicly, not even with most of my business associates. You've been digging into my life. I've been paying attention, he corrects. There's a difference. You're not exactly invisible anymore, Monica. When someone rises as fast and as high as you, have people notice. People talk. And some of us have been watching your trajectory with great interest. He takes a drink, his eyes never leaving mine. I know what they did to you, and I think you deserve justice. Real justice, not just the quiet satisfaction of owning your father's company without him knowing it. And what does justice look like in your vision? I ask, though part of me already knows where this is going. His eyes light up with an enthusiasm that makes him look almost boyish, except there's nothing innocent about what he's suggesting. Imagine it. You're already here, already announced as the CEO investor. All these people are already whispering, already trying to piece together who you really are. Why not give them the full story? Stand up during the reception, take the microphone, and tell them everything. Tell them how your father disowned you for refusing an arranged marriage. Tell them how your mother watched it happen and did nothing. Tell them about sleeping in your car, about the years of struggle, about how you built an empire from nothing while they wrote you off as a failure. He's painting the scene like it's a movie, his hands gesturing expressively. Show them who you've become. Let them see that you're not just successful, you're their silent puppet master controlling the very company your father thought he still owned. Humiliate them in front of everyone they've spent years trying to impress. There's a seductive quality to his words, I'll admit. Part of me, the part that still carries the wound of that terrible night, wants exactly what he's describing. Wants to see father's face when the truth comes out. Wants to watch mother's carefully maintained composure crumble. Wants Jasmine to understand that her perfect life was built on the broken pieces of mine. That part of me, the part that survived by turning pain into fuel, whispers that this would be the ultimate victory. But another voice speaks too quieter, but steadier. Evelyn's voice from one of our many conversations in her kitchen when I was still learning to separate anger from strategy. Don't become the man you fought, she'd said, her hand warm on mine. Revenge might feel sweet in the moment, but it leaves you hollow. The real victory is building something better than what they destroyed. I study Darius carefully, looking for the crack in his performance, the tell that will reveal what he really wants. You're very invested in my revenge for someone who just married into this family, I observe. What's really in this for you, Darius? Why do you care so much about whether I destroy them? Something flickers across his face, too quick for me to identify. Maybe I just don't like seeing injustice go unpunished. Maybe I think people who throw away their children deserve to face consequences. Or maybe you have your own agenda that you're not sharing. I set my champagne flute down, giving him my full attention. You didn't marry Jasmine for love, you said so yourself. You specifically requested my firm for this investment, which means you've been planning this moment for months, maybe longer. You know details about my business structure that require either exceptional research or inside information. I pause, letting the implication settle. So I'll ask you again, what's your angle? He regards me for a long moment, and I can see him calculating how much to reveal, how much honesty serves his purposes. Let's just say I have my own reasons for wanting to see this family's carefully constructed facade come crashing down. Reasons that align with yours even if they're not identical. Think of me as a resource, Monica. Someone who can provide information access opportunities that you might not have on your own. It's a non-answer dressed up as transparency, and we both know it. But there's something about the situation that intrigues me despite my better judgment. Darius is clearly playing a deeper game one I don't fully understand yet. And the only way to understand it is to stay close to play along until his real motives reveal themselves. I also can't deny that part of me wants to know where this leads, wants to test the boundaries of what I'm capable of, wants to see if I have the strength to choose peace over revenge, or if the wounded girl I was still controls more of who I am than I'd like to admit. Tell me more about this plan of yours, Darius, I say, finally my voice giving nothing away. I'm listening. Darius is mid-sentence explaining something about timing and optics when the DJ's voice crackles through the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The music fades and conversations taper into expectant silence. We have a special surprise this evening. The groom has requested a toast from someone very special, the bride's sister, Monica Johnson. The announcement hits like a thunderclap. My head snaps toward the DJ booth, then to the head table where Jasmine has gone absolutely white, her hand frozen halfway to her water glass. She's staring at Darius with an expression of pure betrayal, her mouth forming the word, "what?" though no sound comes out. She clearly had no idea this was coming, didn't approve it, didn't want it. And in that moment I understand with perfect clarity that Darius orchestrated this entire moment, maneuvered me into position, and is now forcing my hand. I could stay seated. I could shake my head politely and decline, let the moment pass, keep my powder dry for a more strategic time. That would be the smart play, the cautious play, the play that Evelyn would probably advise. But something in me, maybe the part that's still angry, maybe the part that's spent 10 years waiting for this moment, maybe just the part that's curious to see what happens when you strike a match near gasoline, decides differently. I stand. The movement feels both natural and surreal, like I'm watching myself from outside my body. Darius's smile widens with satisfaction, but I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing this for the girl who slept in her car, for the woman who built an empire from nothing, for every version of myself that survived when they expected me to disappear. A server materializes beside me with a champagne flute on a tray, as if this moment was choreographed down to the smallest detail. I take it, feeling the cool crystal against my palm, and begin walking toward the front of the reception hall. My heels click against the hardwood floor, each step echoing in the sudden quiet. Guests turn in their chairs to watch me pass their faces, showing various shades of confusion, curiosity, and in some cases dawning recognition of what's about to happen. When I reach the microphone, I take a moment to survey the room. Father at the bar, his knuckles white around his glass. Mother at her table, a napkin pressed to her lips, like she might be sick. Aunts and uncles and cousins all watching with expressions ranging from anticipation to dread. And Jasmine at the head table, her perfect wedding smile completely shattered, looking at me like I'm a natural disaster she can't outrun. Thank you, I say into the microphone, my voice steady and clear. I'm honored to be here tonight to celebrate my sister's marriage. The word sister feels strange in my mouth after so many years almost foreign. Weddings are about family, about the bonds that connect us, about the choices we make to stand by one another through difficulty and joy alike. I pause, letting those words settle, watching faces in the crowd react. Some nod along, thinking this is going to be a standard sentimental toast. Others, the ones who know the history, tense with anticipation. I've been thinking a lot lately about what family means. I continue, my tone remaining graceful, almost conversational, like I'm sharing thoughts over coffee rather than dropping bombs at a wedding. About families that celebrate the children who stay while erasing the children who leave. About families that throw their children away when those children refuse to be what they're told to be, refuse to marry, who they're told to marry, refuse to sacrifice their dreams on the altar of family expectations. The room is so quiet now, I can hear someone's phone buzzing 3 tables away. Father's face has gone from white to red, a vein pulsing visibly in his temple. Mother's eyes are swimming with tears that haven't fallen yet. Some of us were cast out to fall, I say, raising my glass slightly, my voice gaining strength. Told we were worthless, that we'd never amount to anything, that we'd end up begging on the streets. Some of us were erased from family photographs and Christmas cards, written out of wills, treated like we'd never existed at all. I pause, letting my gaze sweep across the room, making brief eye contact with family members who pretended not to see me when I was struggling. But we didn't fall. We learned to fly instead, and now we're soaring higher than those who tried to clip our wings ever imagined possible. There's a moment of suspended silence, and then the room fractures into competing reactions. Younger guests, Jasmine's friends from college and work who don't know the family history, begin to applaud. They hear it as an empowerment message, a triumph over adversity story, the kind of thing that makes good Instagram captions. "Yes," someone calls out, and a table of bridesmaids actually stands up clapping enthusiastically. But the older family members, the ones who know exactly what I'm talking about, sit frozen in their seats. Aunt Carol's mouth hangs open in shock. Uncle Raymond grips the edge of the table like he's trying to keep the world from tilting. Cousin Marcus has his phone out, recording, probably already calculating how much he can get for this footage. Father slams his glass down on the bar so hard, I'm surprised it doesn't shatter. His face is purple now, rage radiating off him in waves. Mother has her napkin pressed to her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. And at the head table, Jasmine slowly, deliberately rises to her feet. She's trembling. I can see it from here, the way her hands shake, the way her breath comes too fast. But I can't tell if it's rage or fear or some volatile combination of both. Her carefully applied makeup is starting to crack at the edges, mascara smudging slightly beneath her eyes. The perfect bride facade is crumbling in real time. "How dare you?" she says, her voice starting quiet, but building in volume. "How dare you come to my wedding and—" I maintain my composure, glass still raised, meeting her eyes with a calmness that I know must infuriate her. "I was just offering a toast to family, Jasmine. Isn't that what sisters do?" Something in her snaps. She reaches for her champagne glass and slams it down on the table so hard the stem breaks, champagne and crystal fragments scattering across the white tablecloth. Her voice, when it comes, is shaking with barely controlled emotion. "Get out of my wedding, now!" The sound of breaking crystal echoes through the reception hall like a gunshot. For a heartbeat, nobody moves. Then chaos erupts. Jasmine is on her feet, her wedding dress rustling as she steps away from the head table, her face contorted with emotion I've never seen on her before. She's always been the composed one, the perfect daughter, the one who knew how to smile and nod and never make waves. But right now, she looks feral. "You're jealous," she screams, her voice cracking on the word. "You've always been jealous of me. Jealous that they loved me more, that I stayed, that I did what family is supposed to do." She's moving toward me now, her bridesmaids scrambling to follow, trying to grab her arms and slow her down. "You couldn't handle not being the center of attention for one day, could you? You had to come here and ruin everything just like you've always ruined everything." I stay exactly where I am. Microphone still in hand, my posture relaxed despite the spectacle unfolding. "I'm not jealous of a life built on lies, little sister." I say, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. The calmness of my tone seems to enrage her further, like she needs me to fight back with equal emotion, and my refusal to do so is its own form of violence. Phones are out now all around the room. I can see the telltale glow of screens, the angle of arms as guests record every second of this confrontation. Tomorrow, this will be all over social media. The Johnson family's dirty laundry aired in high definition. Part of me should care about that, should worry about my professional reputation. But mostly, I just feel oddly detached, like I'm watching actors perform a play I wrote years ago. Jasmine's bridesmaids finally catch up to her, grabbing her arms with urgent whispers of, "Jazz, stop," and "Don't do this," and "Think about the photos." But she shrugs them off with surprising strength. Darius remains seated at the head table watching the scene unfold with an expression of barely concealed satisfaction. He's not intervening, not trying to calm his bride, just observing like this is exactly what he wanted to happen. That's when Father explodes from his position at the bar. He barrels through the crowd with the single-minded fury of a man who's lost control of his narrative and doesn't know how else to reclaim it except through volume and rage. "How dare you!" He roars, his voice so loud it drowns out even the sound system. "How dare you come to this family's celebration and spread your poison!" He's close enough now that I can see the veins bulging in his neck, can smell the whiskey on his breath. His face has gone from red to nearly purple, a color that would be concerning if I had any concern left to give him. He jabs his finger toward me like it's a weapon. "You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing. You'll always be nothing. No matter how much money you throw around, or what fancy titles you buy yourself. I should step back. I should de-escalate. I should do any number of things that a rational person would do when confronted by a man radiating this much rage. But I stand my ground, meeting his eyes with a steadiness that I know must drive him absolutely insane. "I'm nothing," I say quietly, just loud enough for the microphone to catch. "I own your company, Father. I own everything you built, and you signed it over to me without even knowing my name." The words hang in the air like a curse. For a moment, Father just stares at me, his brain visibly trying to process what I've just said, trying to decide if it's true or just another attack. Then understanding dawns, and with it comes something that looks almost like fear beneath the fury. "You were a mistake," he says, but his voice has lost some of its power, sounds almost desperate now. "Throwing you out was the best decision I ever made. You destroyed this family, you—" He doesn't finish the sentence. His words cut off abruptly, his hand flying to his chest. His face, already dangerously red, goes pale in an instant. I watch his eyes go wide, watch his mouth open in a gasp that produces no sound. He clutches at his chest with both hands, now his body swaying like a tree about to fall. "Richard!" Mother screams from her table, and the sound cuts through everything else, pure terror in those two syllables. Father stumbles his legs, giving out beneath him. Guests are screaming now, chairs scraping as people jump up. Someone yells, "Call 911! Sheng Sharam!" And suddenly there are bodies everywhere, people rushing forward, creating a chaotic circle around my father as he falls to his knees on the polished floor. But even as he's collapsing, even as his body is betraying him, he keeps his eyes locked on mine. The hatred in that stare is so pure, it's almost impressive. His lips move, forming words with the last of his strength, and I hear them clearly despite the chaos. "This is your fault." Then he crumples completely, his head hitting the floor with a sound that makes several guests gasp. Suddenly, there are people everywhere. Uncle Raymond loosening Father's tie, Aunt Carol on her phone with emergency services, the wedding coordinator running for the first aid kit she probably hoped she'd never need. Mother is beside him now, cradling his head in her lap, her carefully styled hair falling around her face as she sobs his name over and over. I stay where I am, still holding the microphone, watching the scene unfold with an odd sense of disconnect. Part of me knows I should feel something: guilt, concern, vindication, anything, but I'm numb. Hollowed out. This moment should feel like victory, but instead it just feels empty. The paramedics arrive with impressive speed, their uniforms and equipment a stark contrast to the wedding finery. They work with efficient precision, checking vitals, loading Father onto a stretcher, asking questions that Mother tries to answer through her tears. As they wheel him toward the exit, he's still conscious, barely, his eyes still finding mine across the room. Still blaming me, still hating me, still refusing to see me as anything but the architect of his destruction. The reception hall, so elegant and festive just minutes ago, now looks like a disaster zone. Overturned chairs, abandoned plates, wedding guests clustering in shocked groups whispering behind their hands. Jasmine stands frozen by the head table, her perfect wedding in ruins mascara tracking down her face. She's not looking at Father or the paramedics. She's looking at me, and the expression on her face is something I can't quite read. Accusation maybe, or fear, or understanding, or all of those things at once. I hand the microphone to a stunned server and walk back to my table to collect my purse. The other forgotten guests scatter as I approach like I'm contagious. I'm almost to the exit when my phone buzzes in my clutch. A text from an unknown number, the words appearing on my screen in stark black and white. "Be careful, your father isn't the only one who wants you gone." I stare at the text for a full minute in my hotel room, the threat stark and clear on my phone screen. The smart thing would be to call the police to take the threat seriously, to ask for protection. Instead, I screenshot it forward, it to my lawyer with instructions to document everything and pour myself a whiskey from the minibar. I've survived worse than anonymous threats. And whoever sent it just made a critical mistake. They revealed that someone beyond my father wants me silenced. Father survives the night. By morning, the news is everywhere. Not just that he had a cardiac event, but the context of it. Jasmine must have given a statement to reporters because by the time I check my phone over coffee headlines, scream variations of the same story, sister's wedding toast triggers father's heart attack. CEO's cruel speech sends parent to hospital. Family reunion turns tragedy. Jasmine's face is on the local news, perfectly composed despite red-rimmed eyes telling the anchor that Monica showed up uninvited and deliberately stressed their father with cruel accusations. "She's never forgiven us for setting boundaries years ago," Jasmine says, her voice trembling just enough to seem genuine. "She wanted revenge, and she didn't care who got hurt." My phone explodes with messages. Aunts and uncles I haven't spoken to in a decade suddenly have plenty to say, all of it posted publicly on social media for maximum impact. Aunt Carol writes a long Facebook post about how family should forgive, but some people are too damaged to accept love. Uncle Raymond shares an article about narcissistic daughters with the caption, "Some people never change." Cousin Marcus starts a thread on Twitter analyzing my sociopathic behavior, complete with armchair psychology and links to the video someone took of my toast. Strangers pile on people who don't know me or my history, but feel qualified to send hate messages anyway. My Instagram fills with comments calling me everything from a gold digger to a murderer. Someone creates a hashtag. Within 48 hours, I'm the villain of a story. I didn't write the monster who attacked her own family at a wedding for no reason other than cruelty. But I've spent 10 years learning that public narrative and truth are rarely the same thing. And I know there's more to this story than Father's convenient heart attack and Jasmine's performance for the cameras. So, while they're building their case against me in the court of public opinion, I start building my own case with something more substantial evidence. I begin with Father's business files, the ones I have access to through my controlling interest in his company. What I find in the first hour of digging makes his heart attack seem like the least of his problems. The embezzlement alone is staggering, hundreds of thousands of dollars siphoned from client accounts, employee pension funds, rated insurance fraud that goes back years. He didn't just fail at business. He actively stole from everyone who trusted him, and he'd been doing it long before I was ever born. The forged documents are even more damning. Contracts with signatures that don't match board meeting minutes that never happened, financial statements that show profit where there should be loss. Father built his entire reputation on a foundation of lies, and somehow he'd managed to keep it hidden for decades. But now that I have access, now that I know what to look for, the evidence is everywhere. This is bigger than family drama. This is criminal. And suddenly my exile makes a different kind of sense, not as punishment for defiance, but as elimination of a potential witness. I was working in his company before I was thrown out. I was starting to ask questions about accounts that didn't balance, about clients who existed only on paper. What if father didn't disown me because I refused an arranged marriage? What if he disowned me because I was getting too close to discovering what he really was? I need more evidence, something concrete that connects everything together. Which is why I find myself driving to my childhood home 3 days after the wedding, using the key I never returned because no one ever asked for it back. The house is empty. Mother is still at the hospital with Father. Jasmine is presumably at her honeymoon suite, waiting out the scandal. I let myself in through the back door, moving through rooms that feel like a museum of a life I don't remember living. Father's home office is exactly as I remember it. Dark wood furniture, leather chairs, walls lined with books he never read but kept for appearances. I start with the filing cabinets, methodically working through folders of tax returns and business correspondence. It's in the bottom drawer, buried under folders of old utility bills, that I find the file labeled Insurance Claims, 2014. The year I was disowned. My hands are shaking as I open it, though I'm not sure why. Inside are medical bills, hospital discharge papers, and at the bottom, the intake form from Emory University Hospital Emergency Room. Patient Patricia Johnson. Age 48. Chief complaint: fractured right wrist. Patient states she fell downstairs. Date of admission, March 15, 2014. March 15th. The night father threw me out. The night mother stood silent while he destroyed me. The night she turned her back and let it happen. She'd told me she fell the next day when I saw the cast said she'd tripped in the dark. I'd been too devastated to question it, too focused on my own pain to think about hers. But someone at the hospital had questioned it. Clipped to the intake form is a note handwritten by the attending physician, Dr. Sarah Chen. The words blur as I read them, my vision swimming with tears I didn't know were falling. Injury pattern inconsistent with falling, consistent with defensive wound. Patient appears anxious, husband extremely controlling during exam. Recommended social services consult, but patient declined. Strong suspicion of domestic violence. Patient insisted on discharge against medical advice. The paper crumples slightly in my grip as my hands shake harder. A defensive wound. Mother hadn't fallen. She'd raised her arm to protect herself from a blow. From father. The night he threw me out, he'd hurt her too. And I never knew. I never asked. I was so consumed by my own pain, my own sense of betrayal, that I never considered she might be a victim too. I sit in father's office for a long time after reading that doctor's note, the paper still clutched in my trembling hands. The house creaks around me with the settling sounds of an old building, and I realize I'm crying without having made the conscious decision to do so. Everything I thought I knew about that night is reshaping itself into something darker, more complex, more painful than simple abandonment. Mother wasn't complicit. She was terrified. But understanding requires more than a single doctor's note. If I'm going to build a case that means anything, if I'm going to expose what father really is, I need witnesses. I need a pattern. I need proof that what happened to mother that night wasn't an isolated incident, but part of something bigger and more deliberate. Mrs. Chen still lives next door. I can see her house from father's office window, the same tidy garden, the same blue shutters she's had for as long as I can remember. She used to bring us cookies at Christmas, always asked about my grades, smiled at mother over the fence when they hung laundry on summer mornings. I grab the medical file and walk next door before I can talk myself out of it. She answers on the second knock, her face registering surprise and then something more complicated when she recognizes me. "Monica," she says, my name coming out like an exhale. "I heard you were back in town. I saw the news about your father." "Mrs. Chen, can I ask you about something?" I don't wait for permission, just push forward before my courage fails. "The night I was thrown out 10 years ago, do you remember it?" Her expression shifts, becomes guarded. She glances over my shoulder like she's checking to see if anyone's watching, then opens the door wider. "Come inside." Her living room smells like jasmine tea and old books. We sit on her floral couch and she folds her hands in her lap with the careful precision of someone preparing to confess something they've carried for too long. "I remember," she says quietly. "I heard shouting. Loud shouting. Your father's voice mainly, though I couldn't make out the words. Then I heard glass breaking, something heavy hitting a wall." She pauses, her fingers tightening around each other. "I heard your mother crying, not just crying, sobbing, the kind of sound that makes you want to call for help." "Why didn't you?" I ask, though I already know the answer. "I almost did. I had my phone in my hand, 911 dialed but not called. But then everything went quiet, and I thought maybe I was overreacting, maybe it wasn't my business, maybe—" She stops, looks at me with eyes full of regret. "I'm sorry, Monica. I should have called. I knew something was wrong. We all knew." "We all knew," I repeat, latching onto the plural. Mrs. Chen nods slowly. "The neighborhood, the friends who came over. Anyone who spent time around your parents could see it. Your father controlled everything, where your mother went, who she talked to, how she spent money. She used to be so vibrant, so full of life. But over the years, she just dimmed. We all saw it happening, and we all told ourselves it wasn't our place to interfere." I leave Mrs. Chen's house with a sick feeling in my stomach and a growing list of people to talk to. Over the next 3 days, I conduct informal interviews with everyone I can find who knew my parents. Father's former business partner remembers mother showing up to a company picnic with bruises she blamed on gardening accidents. A woman from mother's book club recalls how she stopped attending after father declared it a waste of time. The family's former housekeeper, now retired, tells me about finding broken dishes hidden in the trash, about the way mother would flinch when father raised his voice about the time she walked in on an argument and saw father's hand around mother's throat. Everyone knew, everyone saw, and everyone did nothing. But witness testimony alone won't be enough. I need documentation, hard evidence of the pattern of control and abuse. So I do what I do best: I follow the money. Through my access to father's business accounts, I pull bank records going back 25 years. What I find is systematic financial abuse. Mother's name disappeared from joint accounts in 1998. Every credit card is in father's name only. The house deed, the car titles, the investment portfolios, all solely in his name, despite the fact that mother brought significant wealth into the marriage from her own family's inheritance. That inheritance is particularly damning.